Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to the June 8th Oregon Tourism Commission briefing. To everyone who has joined us here today in the Dalles and to those joining through the Travel Oregon's Industry YouTube channel, thank you for taking the time to be with us. Today's meeting materials, including the agenda and supplemental material, can be found on the Travel Oregon Industry website if you'd like to follow along. Commissioners, I'd like to acknowledge that in holding a meeting today, we met all public meeting notice requirements provided by state law. With that, I'd like to begin today by asking each commissioner to briefly introduce themselves, starting with Commissioner Pearson and working back this way.
Nick Pearson, the general manager of the Jupiter Hotel and Jupiter Next in Portland, and managing partner of the Motor Lodge out in Pendleton.
Hi, I'm Heather Miller, general manager of accommodations at The Ground in Yamhill County.
Good afternoon, Travis Hill, Chief Operating Officer for UIDC, representing the Cow Creek Tribe and Seven Feathers Casino Resort. I just want to say great to be here in the Columbia Gorge region today, and excited to excited to be in the region for a couple more days after this. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Harish Patel. I own a couple lodging facilities in Oregon. Thank you.
Commissioner Gremmels.
Thank you, Chair Will. It's David Gremmels, Commissioner at Large from Medford, Oregon. It's really a pleasure to be here and grateful for the warm welcome from the Dalles. It's been really lovely. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Rowe. I own and operate Crater Lake Zipline in Klamath Falls, Oregon, and also excited to be here and never hungry.
Good afternoon, Lucinda DeNovo, Director of Sales and Events at Coquel Casino Resort in Coos Bay and Medford, owned by the Coquel Indian Tribe. And I too wanted to thank this team and those in the Dalles for the lovely hospitality that we've received so far. We had a lovely tour of the Sanchez farms. We went to their farm stand this morning, had amazing sweet cherries, and I learned more about the farming industry. So just wanted to thank them for the lovely tour.
Thank you, Lucinda. And my name is Greg Willits. I have Five Pine Lodge in Sisters, Oregon, and Shibui Spa. It's a family-built, owned, run mini resort in lovely Sisters, Oregon. And I too was impressed from a meal yesterday in Dufur at the Balch Hotel. Was incredibly restored brick building in a rebounding town with a lot of creativity and drive, and today's exposure to small farm with a lot of examples of people that work really hard based on passion and love for what they do, and if they make money, it seems like they're feeling fortunate, but we need those people every day throughout Oregon to drive economies and drive creativity, and we saw a lot of that today. Thank you for the warm reception in the region. And today's briefing provides us with some extended time to hear from and engage with staff regarding topics that have been a focus area of Travel Oregon and Oregon's tourism industry. I'll now turn this over to Todd to introduce the topic and speakers to us.
All right. Thank you, Chair Willits. Just as a reminder for the commissioners, because you've all had various lengths of time in serving on the commission, some newer than others, these briefings were actually set up several years ago by the commission because there was a realization that the 3 hours in our standing public meeting at that time was inadequate to necessarily dive into all the topics. And sometimes there might be one or two topics that really deserved, additional discussion and opportunities for exploration, brainstorming, whatever the need may be. And so the commission proposed that we started adding on this time to do these briefings. And so today we will have 3 updates that we'll bring forward for you. And the first I'm very pleased to invite to join us up here Kate Baumgardner, who's our External and Public Affairs Strategist, and Julia Mata, who is our Director of Communications, to update us on the recent legislative session and our public affairs efforts. Kate, Julia, thanks for joining us today.
Great. Thanks, Todd. Good afternoon, everyone. Really excited that Julia is here with me as well, and we'll spend some time talking about session, some of the outcomes, and then some of our broader value of tourism work as it relates to public affairs and communications. So you all are used to this from me by now, but anytime we have these legislative and policy-focused conversations, I like to ground us in a common understanding of Travel Oregon's role, which is that we're a state agency, and therefore I'm not a lobbyist, we don't take positions on legislation, and we're also not organizing others to take positions on bills on our behalf as well. And that means that in a legislative session, our role in testimony, sitting at the table, arguing for or against a bill, is limited, but we still have a critical role to play in policy conversations, answering questions from the legislature, providing our research, sharing factual information, and then using the tools that we have at our disposal to track bills and policy processes and share those with interested parties as well. More broadly, we can continue to contribute to high-level, non-bill specific conversations around tourism's value and impact across the state, and Julie will spend some time later in the presentation sharing how we've done that over the last 6 months. But to dive into legislative session specifically, I'm going to focus on bills that passed and have now been signed into law that have a specific bearing on the tourism industry. As I do that, I want to hold some space for the fact that this was a challenging legislative session. And for many of our partners, it wasn't only demanding in terms of their time in Salem and their time engaging with legislators, sometimes with as little as a couple hours notice before a hearing, but some of the outcomes were certainly challenging as well. And so as I speak to challenges and opportunities in relation to bills, again, I'm not doing that in a perspective of the agency having an agenda, but I'm doing it to echo what we've heard from industry partners, from other voices, and to share it for your contextual understanding as these bills come into law. Many of them are becoming law this week. Some will become law in early January, just depending on the specifications around the policy. So to start, House Bill 4148 is a bill that's focused on the use of local transient lodging taxes, so those that are collected at the city or county level. By and large, the statute has been for the last 20-some years that any new or increased tax since 2003, 70% of that money is spent on tourism, 30% can be spent on general or county services, and then amounts prior to 2003 are locked in or grandfathered, so to speak. This bill makes a change kind of across the board to say that communities need to spend at least 50% of money on tourism and up to 50% on general or county services. And that's true for past taxes, for those post-2003 taxes, and then for future or new taxes coming as well. That's going to look different in different communities. Communities that are currently not spending 50% on tourism don't have to come up to that threshold, but we certainly know that there are going to be reductions in tourism spending in a number of communities across the state. The bill also creates some new reporting requirements for county and city governments, and then also creates something called a resiliency grant. So as we speak to challenges, what we've heard from DMOs and other industry partners is that there's real concern around those resiliency grants. There's very little definition or guardrail within the bill. It simply says that tourism spending can include grants for small businesses in the restaurant or lodging industry focused on resiliency. Not a lot of other specification there, and I know that there are questions about what that's going to mean, both in terms of dollars getting into community and some of the provisions and guardrails there within. More broadly, I think that there's certainly anticipation that there are going to be cuts to promotion spending. If a community is bonding on a tourism facility, they're not going to default on their bond just because statute allows them to, but those shifts in marketing budgets can happen right away. And I know that there's concern about what that means for DMO staffing and capacity moving forward. I know that at Travel Oregon, we're certainly looking to understand what that means to some of our partnerships and relationships, just as capacity becomes more limited. And then more broadly, what we'll be monitoring for is the cumulative impact over time of local reduction spending going down and the impact that that has on visitor spending. I want to be clear that it's not that we expect visitor spending gets slashed by 40% overnight, right? But we know when there's less of those major local initiatives happening, that broader awareness play for tourism is less front of mind in many of the markets that we prioritize as well. And we'll be monitoring to understand that cumulative impact over time and sharing those findings. There's also the reality that as local government has the ability to capture more of those transient lodging tax dollars, there's potential for an uptick in additional new or increased taxes, and that becomes especially relevant for the bill that we'll talk about next. But understanding what that does to broader market competitiveness for some other players around the West, and the general price sensitivity that we know our travelers are facing right now. In terms of opportunities, I do think this is a moment for Travel Oregon to really reintegrate with DMOs and emphasize our shared resources. As folks are making challenging budget trade-off decisions, how are we doing the work to emphasize what we have and can be utilized by those DMOs so they're not making duplicative funding decisions? For example, in our research space, how are we really making clear the ways in which research can be drilled down at the county level so people aren't making investments in products that we essentially can offer and already offer publicly on our website? Or in our marketing space, if there are folks making cuts to their marketing budget, how are we emphasizing our co-op programs for the year, where we've not only done the heavy lifting and administrative work to negotiate those rates, and that's one less step to worry about, but they're also really competitive rates for our offerings. So that's an agency-wide opportunity and priority, but it's certainly something that's front of mind for me as I'm evaluating the policy. And then I've spoken to this a bit, but just a note that this is going to look different in every community, not only because of the share of the tax, but also how tax policy is enacted at the local level. Some have to do it by an initiative or vote of the people. Some can make a smaller administrative change. I think we expect that communities that have entirely new taxes over the last 20 years, such as McMinnville or Tillamook County, are likely most susceptible to shift, knowing that that share going down to 50% is most significant. So we'll certainly be monitoring for that. To continue in the transient lodging tax space, House Bill 4134 is a bill that increases the statewide lodging tax from 1.5% to 2.75% and directs that new revenue largely to natural resource programs at ODF and W, but to a couple other habitat and natural resource programs elsewhere around the state as well. As far as challenges, I know that there's concern about what this increased rate is going to do to price sensitivity of visitors writ large, but certainly in our meeting and convention markets especially, where we know that meeting planners look at tax rates as an important key to competitiveness and site selection. So we'll be monitoring for understanding that impact in our key meeting and event spaces. And then I think another concern that we've certainly heard is that for 20 plus years, this tax has been really focused on reinvestment and on economic development, because, including leaders sitting at this table, the industry saw an economic opportunity and asked the legislature to capitalize on it. Now that that development focus has been expanded, what does that mean for future conversations around the utility of the tax? In terms of opportunities, we know that there's going to be significant additional resource at ODF and W with these dollars. It'll be interesting to evaluate as they think about that investment, what it means for our relationships and some of our co-programmed efforts at ODF and W as it currently exists. And then I will note that the governor did include what's called a signing letter or a signing statement when she signed this bill. Those are relatively rare. There were only a handful of them this legislative session, but in it she acknowledged her concerns about what this would do to convention and event tourism specifically. So it's helpful to know that this is something that she'll be monitoring for, and certainly I think we'll be in close touch, especially with our more convention-focused DMOs, to make sure that we're understanding what their booking rates are looking like for future years and some of those broader conversations. I'll also call out here that we've already been in touch with the Department of Revenue, making sure that we're understanding the data that they're going to give to us in our reporting to make sure that we're making the necessary administrative followings for things like the RCTP program. Now that there is a share of the transient lodging tax that's not specific to Travel Oregon, we want to make sure we understand what that 1.5% number looks like in every region specifically. To shift a bit to bills that I think are being celebrated or embraced in a different way by the tourism industry. House Bill 4153 is a bill focused on agritourism and expands provisions on exclusive farm use land to include a new concept called a farm store, which is a larger, broader concept agritourism offering, and then also some additional things like farm-to-table dinners and farm tours that have previously operated in kind of a challenging, county-by-county gray area across the state. This is a bill that I think is certainly being celebrated by many of our agriculture producer and agritourism partners. And we know that it's going to lead to new product development, which is exciting to think about some of the different farm tours, farm-to-table dinners, some of those really great offerings that Julia can attest are front of mind for a lot of consumer audiences moving forward. So it's exciting to think about what that will look like in Oregon a couple years from now. This bill comes into effect in January, and there's going to be a couple other provisions that become clear kind of at the county administrative level between now and then. But we do know that this is a space that land use groups have indicated that they may have some legal challenge, so we'll be watching to understand what does that legal action look like. Is it specific, in the county where it's being argued, or is there a broader impact on the state? And how are we monitoring for some of that uncertainty, especially knowing that many of our farmer partners are not necessarily legal experts, right? So making sure that we're understanding what disruption is happening in the meantime. And then I think we'll also be monitoring what's happening to resident sentiment in some of these more ag and farm focused communities. Having a really large tourism asset come online might be somewhat disruptive, and so we'll be trying to understand what that looks like at a local level and see if there are tools that we can offer to help a smooth transition. Hillary Sager has been doing some really great work in her food systems learning community and in her work in our agritourism space across the agency to make sure that we're developing materials and resources so that people think of Travel Oregon as a place that they can go to learn more. Our Ask an Expert system has already been emphasized as a tool there, and we've developed some additional materials and guidance for folks who are interested in exploring farm stores or some additional provisions so they understand what's shifting from current legislation. And then I'll also say that Todd and I were invited to the ceremonial bill signing for this bill out on Sauvie Island. In her remarks signing the bill, the governor did call out the importance of tourism promotion and amplifying and sharing these resources, which was encouraging to see. We also just heard some really great perspective from local farmers who were celebrating the bill about what this is going to mean in their communities, and looking forward to seeing that come to fruition over the next couple years. Then finally, Senate Bill 1517 is one you've heard me talk about in previous iterations. It addresses the somewhat challenging recreation and guide and outfitter liability landscape in the state, which has essentially been that liability waivers were largely unenforceable in Oregon due to some legal precedent. This bill now allows operators to require participants to sign a waiver waiving ordinary negligence for any sport, fitness, or recreation activity. And we know that that's likely to bring some stability not only to the insurance market, but to operations in general for our recreation and outfitter partners, which is certainly going to be important, especially in the challenging snow year that we had and are looking towards next year as well. We've already seen that there's greater utilization of some of our guide and outfitter networks, some of our Y-Guide tools and messaging efforts as folks are starting to understand what this means for their business. And we'll be monitoring for different trainings and facilitations that are being offered by recreation providers or Oregon Guide and Outfitters Association to amplify those with our Y-Guides and other partners as well. This is, I think, going to be a challenging landscape for some of our really small operators to implement because the bill includes some pretty specific legal nuances that are going to take some time to understand. And I think that's why it's important that we're doing what we can in our state agency role to share what this new bill means for folks as well. So as we walk away from legislative session, I think there are learnings that certainly stick out for me. One is that there's a strong appreciation in Salem for the importance of the outdoor recreation economy. Not only in the need to fix that recreation liability bill, which we did see pass, but also in the broader conversation around the increase to the statewide transient lodging tax. There was a strong embrace of, well, this is a $16 billion economy that's, gear and visitor spending and so many of these different tools. We got to do something to reinvest into that space. So we certainly see that there's an understanding of outdoor rec driving Oregon's economy. I think there's a space for us to lean into to talk about how tourism drives Oregon's outdoor recreation economy. More broadly, there's an increased need to drive conversations around tourism's value and impact across the state. While I think that outdoor piece was understood, I don't know that there's a strong of an understanding of 1 in every 16 jobs in the state is exclusively supported by a tourist. There are ways that we're thinking about leaning into that more, but doing that honestly. There were a couple times that I was sitting in hearing rooms listening to folks say things like, well, the tourism industry is totally recovered from the pandemic, or we don't actually need to spend these dollars in these ways. We can think about some other things because tourism's doing fine. And many of you as business leaders and business owners know that it's not a rosy picture everywhere around the state, and we need to contribute honestly about what's happening on the ground, but also talk about why our impact is critical. So Julia and her team and myself have been doing a lot of work to kind of walk that line and narrative, and I'll pass it to her to share a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. I always feel a lot smarter after hearing Kate present. No, thanks for that. And I just wanted to share a little bit about the value of tourism work the communications team has done in hand with Kate. And so, yes, we did take away a learning from this legislative session that there's room for more work to showcase the value of tourism, but we saw that heading into session. So we really put some great systems in place within Travel Oregon to kind of look across all departments and see where we were putting tourism dollars at work in communities. And as you all know, the easiest story to tell there is through our grant work, where we're giving grants out to communities. So we started with our grants team and had a full list of projects that money had gone out the door, and then there was real work to show for it and a real story to tell. So we got all of that in place and started going out in January with some pitches all across the state, where sometimes we led those pitches, but my mantra in comms, which I'm sure y'all have heard me say before, is let the people closest to the work do the talking. So we worked with folks in those communities to put a quote in the press release, and sometimes they actually sent the press release out themselves, but really it was the underlining narrative was showing not only the project and the success story for that community, but how it was funded, and that is through tourism dollars. So since January, we have earned 44 statewide stories with nearly 48 million circulation. And I just want to put a note that that's in addition to all of the great Wheel the World verified accessible stories that I have presented about before. So that also shows tourism dollars at work, but that was a very much consumer facing, here's how you experience Oregon with all of our adaptive sports, which, in case you missed it, we had a great feature in the New York Times yesterday about that work. So we have, since January, really had a lot of concerted effort to tell this story. And then with the National Travel and Tourism Week in May, that gives us another kind of news hook opportunity to show the cumulative impact of the tourism industry and the work, the value of tourism and the work that we do. So we leaned into that. I'll get into some specific stories from that week in the next slide. But the other thing that I just wanted to highlight is, you know, in the vein of working better together to tell the value of tourism story, we, this next fiscal year, are working with our DMO and DMO partners to come together in a system called MuckRack, which is like a media monitoring, media access tool where we can track sentiment, we can track keywords, we can really stay connected on kind of what is the sentiment, what stories are coming out, where are there opportunities to tell another angle or lean into a specific reporter if we wanted to work with them on a story like that. So that is in partnership with our destination stewardship team. We're pulling some dollars together to help move that forward. So diving into National Travel and Tourism Week specifically, we use that week typically to announce our economic impact report. And while we typically go out with the numbers, it's a number heavy report. This year we took a little bit of a different strategy where we worked across the industry and brought up those storytellers from the industry and had quotes from them in the release, had them set up to be able to speak to media. And we specifically worked with folks in the wine industry and the guides and outfitter industry. Really in an effort to balance that narrative of, you know, the industry at large is facing headwinds. Though we've shown nominal growth, there are still headwinds. The wine industry is feeling that very acutely. And then on the positive side, working with a guide and outfitter who said they've been able to extend their business because of some of the tourism offerings like our dark sky work. So we really wanted to bring those voices up, have them help tell the story. And as a subset of that 44 stories I just mentioned on the slide before, we had 27 of them were statewide stories specifically focused on NTTW. And I have a few of my favorites. All of them are good. But on the screen here, the Oregonian, you know, we consider it a big win when we can get into the Oregonian because it does reach most folks. So they did a bigger Oregon Insight story on it. Portland Business Journal actually led with our economic impact report as they did a bigger several-part series on the state's economy. So that's there featured in the middle. And then we had a few really great localized, like the Hermiston Herald story here. So they took that economic impact report and did some great reporting and got some local voices to showcase kind of what the local impact of tourism is in their community. So really happy with the results from National Travel and Tourism Week. Kate's going to talk a little bit more about some specific activations, but we're looking forward to kind of going deeper and broader and doing some bigger things next year too.
Great, thanks. So in addition to being a great media opportunity, we also see National Travel and Tourism Week as an opportunity to engage the workforce and our frontliners especially. As with past years, we offered support to RDMOs who wanted to do some of that frontline worker engagement and had 3 take us up on it this year: Central Oregon, Mount Hood and the Gorge, and the Willamette Valley Visitors Association. And they really leaned into that mission, which is U.S. Travel's kind of core mission for NTTW, to celebrate the essential role of driving economic impact, but also cultivating and forging connections in community. So in inspiration from an event that Mount Hood and the Gorge has been doing for a handful of years now, all 3 RDMOs kind of did a thank you and engagement project with a number of their frontliners. You can see Ithaca and I up at Timberline Lodge. They actually make an effort to give little care packages to every single business that has an Otis listing for their entire region, which is a massive undertaking, certainly not something that we can take credit for from our support alone. But they do that and share economic impact information, community impact information like grants, and then some resources headed into the summer about how to further engage with the RDMO and tourism infrastructure. Central Oregon did something similar, focused on their lodging partners this year. And then Tori and her team at WABA did something focused on visitor information and welcome centers as well, making sure they had the resources they needed heading into summer and also felt appreciated and understood. So a really great way that folks are leaning into the Travel Oregon priority to increase the value of tourism's perception around the state, and doing that by increasing advocacy among the workforce as well. So it's always one of my favorite days of the year to be out doing those thank yous. And like Julia said, I think we're excited to think creatively about some of the additional activations that might be possible next year as well. And this presentation has been largely state focused, but I'd be remiss to not acknowledge that there's really important conversations and dynamics happening at the federal level as well. So this spring, we were back in DC for US Travel's annual fly-in destination Capitol Hill once again. We had a great delegation this year, including Commissioner Rowe, staff from Travel Lane County, Travel Portland, the Port of Portland, Travel Oregon. Todd and Petra were with us, but weren't at the meeting where we took this photo op. So had some really robust representation and had really meaningful engagement with every single member of Oregon's congressional delegation, which felt super encouraging. US Travel kind of puts together their packaged policy agenda, so the entire industry is singing from one song sheet, and this year it was focused on increasing funding for Brand USA, making sure we were sharing our concerns about visa integrity fees, also sharing concerns about what social media screening would do for visitation from our visa waiver countries, and then talking a bit about the impact of government shutdowns on TSA and air traffic control, and pushing for those staff people to be protected from future shutdowns as well. As is our nature, we like to have Oregon-specific conversations, so we also come to those conversations prepared with some Oregon-specific perspectives. This year we spent some great time talking about some local projects that have been driven by federal delegation support, including some investments in our local airports, and then had some really robust conversations around public lands, staffing, funding, and capacity, which was so nice to have Commissioner Rowe and her expertise join those conversations as well. So as we transition into questions, maybe I'll hand it over to Commissioner Rowe to share any reflections on her time in DC with us.
Yeah, sure, the hot seat. So Jennifer Rowe again. I did get to go to Capitol Hill with the delegation. It was really exciting to be a part of the conversation and just see them at work. It was just, really that's what it was a conversation and informing and being able to share in that space without going outside of your boundaries was not easy, right? They have to stay in their lane, but certainly there to give good perspectives. It was really nice for me to be able to go and lend that small business voice to the conversation and kind of, I don't want to say humanize it, kind of, bring it down to how does this affect us at a small business? How does it affect us here in the state? To make sure that they are not forgetting while you're in our capital, things are still happening on the ground here. And so I just really appreciated the learning curve that Kate, prepared me for, and the whole team really, and just coming alongside, but giving me room to lend my voice in the conversation and really get a good intimate look at them at work. It was very impressive. So I encourage any commissioner that has a chance to go.
Commissioners, any questions?
Kate, you talked about HB 4153 a bit, and just touched on opportunities that might be ahead of us, and just looking at the future to promote agritourism and farm stands that are currently in existence, and of course new farm stands. And I'm very excited about that opportunity and look forward to what develops within Travel Oregon. And are there any insights or guidance from HB 4153 that will help us in deciding where to look and move forward in promoting agritourism and future farm stands and the current farm stands, and of course, farmers markets. Yeah.
Yeah, great question, Commissioner Grimmels. Thanks so much. And I know you're such a champion in this space, so really excited to see what happens down in Central Point, especially as some of these pieces come on. I think in terms of guidance, we've developed kind of like a one-pager, really a two-pager, on what is existing farm stand regulation, because I should be clear that farm stands, similar to the one you visited today, are totally allowed to keep on keeping on without having to take any extra steps to come in compliance coming out of this bill. It's if folks want to do something a little bigger, a little broader, like a farm store, which can be up to 10,000 square feet, and can have kind of additional value-added products or products that are connected to the agricultural work but aren't necessarily generated exactly on that farm or from a neighboring farm. So we have a tool that talks through those different pieces. And then I think in terms of opportunities with promotion, what's going to be exciting is certainly some of the integration of food service more directly. The bill says that you can't have like a full service cafe operating on farmland, but you can have additional food service, counter service, some of those like hot, ready to consume meals, which has been certainly a barrier for a number of our partners in the past. And I think folks are excited to see about how that's going to bring people to farms and also introduce them to new products. And then some of those like more produced farm to table dinners, they do have to be provided by the farm operator themselves. It can't be that there's a third party who comes in and contracts and just does them all around the state, which I know has been a model that has worked with some communities based on their land use governance in the past. So it'll be interesting to see which farmers have capacity to kind of really lean in and think about those development pieces as they come. But it's also kind of a space that folks can take their time, right? We know that there's growing demand for this. So thinking about not only what's going to be ready next summer, but are there things that people test and try or start to get their feet under them and continue to roll out, I think will be exciting for us. But some of those more agritourism specific provisions like farm to table meals, farm tours, some of those like get your hand dirty engagement opportunities, I think from our understanding about what consumers are really interested in are going to be really cool to offer around the state.
Yeah, I'll just chime in real quickly and say there was an article probably like 6 to 8 months ago in Vogue magazine that said agritourism is the new wellness travel, and so it was a lot of focus on how folks are looking to that true farm to table dinner experience and wanting to do more kind of immersive farm stays and dining out at the farm. It's not enough to bring it to the restaurant apparently anymore. But no, that is a trend. It is a growing trend globally, not just here in the U.S. But that really stuck with me. That article really stuck with me, and I'd be happy to share it as a follow-up if y'all are interested.
Thank you.
Well, great. Thank you for the answer, and really excited about the opportunity. And thank you for sharing the guidance page that was created too. That's going to be helpful for so many.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I should note, I had a bullet on there, but one thing that I think has been exciting for us at the agency is to think about, as we're developing this guidance, what does it mean for our partnerships with more of like the traditional agriculture partners? So as we developed that one-sheeter, we had a good touch base with the Department of Land and Conservation Development to be like, are we understanding this from the same perspective? What are the things that you're hearing, maybe more hot button or less clear moving forward? And then we've had similar positive touch points with the Department of Agriculture, is kind of like knowing that there's going to be more tourism relevance in their work moving forward too. So that's really exciting to think about, and certainly something that we'll continue to iterate on.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other? Travis, please.
Jen?
Oh, go ahead.
Great report. Thank you so much for those. On the one question on the House or the SB 1517, you mentioned that the smaller outfitters might be challenged with some of the legal processes of that. Is there an opportunity for like a workshop maybe to be produced on that, or maybe talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, great question. So I think that we've heard some of the more like insurance experts that were strong advocates for the bill are thinking about what they're developing workshop or training wise. So we've been in touch with them to kind of understand how they're getting an early sense of it. I do think that's something that we'll be able to certainly amplify and share on our Y Guides channels as they become available in some of our other broader guide and outfitter spaces. And then I think similarly, the Oregon Guide and Outfitters Association did so much work to get that bill across the finish line. They're really trying to make sure they're understanding what it's going to mean for their membership, and have done a couple smaller trainings, and looking forward to staying in touch with them as they think about additional tools as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I'll actually add to that too, Travis. So there have been a few trainings that have gone on. Some of them are pay to play kind of thing, but I think some more are coming very shortly. And you know, the ski industry is impacted by that as well. And sometimes they're leading the way with some of those training sessions. So one of the great things that Hillary does is she keeps an open conversation available to guides and outfitters. And so those conversations in email and just making sure that people are informed of opportunities. So it's pretty cool to see that work. My question, though, is you mentioned, and you may not have the answer to this, Kate, but I just was curious if you could expand on the HB 4134. You said there was a letter attached to it. Can you help me understand what that allows or might allow?
Sure, yeah, great question. So a signing letter or signing statement is typically included when the governor is signing a bill that she wants to share some additional thoughts or context on. And it's not necessarily that there's a legislative response to it, or, you know, it's not a line item veto or anything specific like that, but I think it puts on the record what is her perspective on a bill, because by and large, the governor allows the legislature to have legislative-based conversations and then comes in if it's something specific to her legislative agenda that she's introduced, her budget, some of those pieces. So the letter doesn't necessarily change the bill going into effect in any way, but I think puts on record that, you know, she did have those concerns about the impact of the tourism industry. There are a couple other pieces of the letter, you know, her also emphasizing the importance of the outdoor recreation economy, her talking about the need to invest in natural resources. So it's not all concern on record, but I think it indicates that she's paying attention and she's following those things, and I think it makes it incumbent upon Travel Oregon to say, okay, what are the governor's concerns? What tools do we have to follow and report on those concerns as they come up in our policy-based conversations?
Okay, thank you.
On the resiliency grants, as I imagine it's complicated, as briefly as you can, like, what does the process look like for us to have clarity around that, and do we have any role in what that looks like?
That is the multi-million-dollar question, potentially. I don't think that there's any formal rulemaking that is expected coming out of this bill. That typically would be sort of the first pass at some additional clarity or guardrails. I have not heard any indication that that's happening, and there's nothing in the bill that directs any agency or body to do rulemaking. I think the first time that we'll see, you know, what's the global sense of those grants coming into play is the bill, like I said, requires cities and counties to report use of transient lodging taxes now. That report, I think, is due for the first time 2 years from January. So that will be the first time to be like, okay, who really is engaging in this space? What does it mean? I think we're certainly monitoring to understand what is some of the pickup in between as we're hearing it from our DMOs and DMO partners. I can't speak for ODA or Orla or other more like trade organizations that may be focused on looking for some guardrails or additional changes related to resiliency grants, but I know that it was a really heavy focus debate among the legislators themselves in the final days of session, saying, why would we pass this bill that doesn't have any guardrails? I have concern. There was a minority report issued that asked for the language to be stricken, and it was withdrawn as there was some additional back and forth, and the legislator who sponsored that minority report kind of said on the record during his floor speech, like, I think people understand that I've created a big enough hubbub around this that we're going to all be paying attention, and we're going to expect there to be some additional conversation in that space. So all that to say, I think it means wait and see, understand what happens and looks like at the local community, but I do think given all those concerns that have been shared on the record consistently by a number of legislators, cities are going to understand that there's some watchful eyes on those programs moving forward.
Okay, you mentioned cities and counties are supposed to record. What exactly are they recording? How they spend, what they spent, or just generalized they've done so far?
Absolutely. So I'm happy to get you the specific language. They're supposed to file a report. Technically, I think every city and county that has a transient lodging tax is supposed to file one. There's a provision that allows the League of Cities and Association of Counties to kind of act as the aggregator for that if enough of them ask for that to be the case. But yes, it would be, what is the total transient lodging tax collected at the local level? What is the percentage by which it's divided? What of that tourism promotion spending, what does that look like? What is the tourism facilities investment? What is the resiliency grant investment? And then the city and county services side, what's that total spend and what are some of the pieces that that's going into? Because right now there's really not a robust, I mean, we did a study that would have represented city budgets for fiscal year 2018 that, you know, kind of took stock statewide, but it was aggregated, so it wasn't specific to understanding, you know, here's what's happening in Wasco County or the city of the Dalles, for example. So this will put some additional requirements on record to understand how those dollars are administered.
So will there be any audits? Will they be required? Because so far, like you said, there is no history when Orla asks cities and counties, they sometimes don't even respond. So will it be required for them if they're audited?
It will be required regardless of an audit. They're required to do it, and they're required to submit it to the Legislative Revenue Office, which is the body that oversees tax policy within the legislature. And then I believe that that Legislative Revenue Office will present it to the House and Senate Revenue Committees to share their findings as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Kate and Julia, thank you. I'll tell you, Travel Oregon and this industry are very well served by both of you, so thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. Commissioners, our next presentation, I'm watching to see who's moving. All right, Matt, you're going to get us switched over? All right, thank you. For our next presentation, I'm going to welcome our Regional Based Services Director and relatively new father, well, father of two, Harry Delgard, now the father of Harry IV, and Tori Middlestad, who's the Executive Director of the Willamette Valley Visitors Association, to provide us with an update on the Willamette Valley Visitors Association RDMO. Harry, again, congratulations, Dad.
That feels really good, thank you. Hopefully Harry IV will get a chance soon to explore the state, but he's been in the confines of Southeast Portland, living his best life, so yeah, thank you for that. So today we have an opportunity to hear from the Willamette Valley Visitors Association about just an organizational update. And the reason for that organizational update largely has to do with the RFP designation process that occurred in June of 2024. So initially, I'll provide you all just a brief primer / review of what that process looked like. And some of the recommendations out of the review process for the Willamette Valley Visitors Association. And then I will also provide my recommendation and the RCTP team's recommendation for designation for commission consideration in moving forward. After that, you'll get to hear from the Willamette Valley Visitors Association team about everything that is inclusive in their current plan and really how they've responded to the feedback received in June of 2024. All right, so just as a primer, just so everyone on the commission is aware, I know there are some new faces that weren't there during the designation process in 2024. The OTC holds the authority in statute to designate regional destination management organizations. And in the process run last time, we had a cohort or a review team established of a cohort of Travel Oregon staff in addition to members of the Oregon Tourism Commission. Prior to that designation process, the last designation process was in February of 2019. So we concluded that initial designation, or that designation, and we were in need of running an RFP-based process to determine future designees for the Regional Cooperative Tourism Program and the Oregon Wine Country License Plate Tourism Promotion Program. So that's what we did. We ensured that the RFP was tracking with our 10-year strategic vision. So that's what we asked applicants to provide, was a plan and budget, a proposed budget that really showed how that organization could best execute everything that was inclusive of Travel Oregon's 10-year vision. So we were able to make 5 out of 7 designations on the spot for RCTP, and two additional designations for the Oregon Wine Country License Plate Tourism Promotion Program in June of 2024. At the June 2024 designation meeting, the Willamette Valley was given a designation that you can see on the screen here. It was a one-year conditional contract contingent upon representing plan and staff plan, and then up to a 7-year designation following that. So that's where we are right now in time, is that 1-year review, and that's what we're going about today. So just to remind everyone and or bring everyone up to speed, the Willamette Valley's RFP presentation, is as follows, or not is as follows, but is illustrated on the screen. And some of the areas of focus that the Willamette Valley Visitor Association was asked to really adhere to and or address was really issues around staffing and issues around staffing around the executive team that they have, as well as ensuring that their budget is correctly allocated and aligns with key priorities and initiatives that were illustrated in their strategic plans put forth. So I'm pleased today to say that the Willamette Valley Visitor Association is executing very well, and through our course of monitoring WAVA, through quarterly consultations, through one-on-one meetings with Tori, and really just kind of seeing how their investments and programming is functioning in the field. Happy to provide this recommendation, which is a 7-year designation comprised of 3 2-year contracts conditional upon a midpoint review by the OTC. And that is the same designation that the other RDMOs and Oregon Wine Country License Plate Tourism Promotion Program recipients received at the initial designation period. So we believe that WAVA is up to the task of executing in the highest regard, and to really kind of illustrate that work, I'll hand it over to Tori and her team to showcase what's been going on. So I can be available at the end for questions, but otherwise I'm going to step aside and call the rest of the staff out.
We're going to do a minor shuffle. You're going to get to hear from the whole team today, and Matt's going to swap the presentation for me. Thank you. I do want to say thank you today to the Commission, to Todd, to having us back to give a regional update. I'm very excited with the progress WAVA has made over the last year. We got to present in Joseph last June to the Commission, so for some commissioners there might be some reminders. Some of the newer commissioners, there'll just be some brand new information, but we'll bring you along for the journey. So thank you for having us today. All right, so what we're going to talk about is I'm going to introduce the team. Last June I presented, we were at a goal to be a staff of 4, and here we are, a strong team of women of 4. I'm going to remind us about we built a long-term strategic plan to 2031. In that we also have some community definitions that I was going to level set with where we are, and then we're going to talk about some of this year's accomplishments as well as next year's plans and priorities. I'll give a budget update, and then we'll also dive in a little bit into the Wine Country Plate Region 2 that we manage at the kind of tail end of our presentation. So I am really excited about the team I have. They're just taking names everywhere they go, and so it's been amazing to watch that. We have Karen Olson. She's our Destination Development Manager. She runs our destination development work, our global sales, a lot of our industry communications. And so she's joined last June. She's about to hit her 1 year. I'm really excited for her to be on our team. I have Claire Harriman. She's our marketing manager. She runs our marketing, our PR, our basically paid, earned, and what's the last one I'm thinking of? Owned, duh. Our own channels. So really managing our consumer voice. And we have Melissa Sanchez, who is our marketing and social media manager. She manages all of our organic social channels. She assists Claire in PR and marketing efforts. And Melissa actually joined us as an intern and then started part-time the last fiscal year. And as of July 1, was able to bring her on full-time. So she's really grown into her position, which I love seeing for the future generations of tourism. So, our strategic plan. When I returned back to WAVA, we were really at a point where we really needed to think about what were our guiding lights. This was an 8-year contract that we were wanting to get back, and how do we work and how do we program in a way that these years build on each other and build momentum to have more tangible change. So our overall high-level imperatives, there's really 4 categories: elevate community engagement, education, and advocacy. And so this is how we are serving our industry. Support community-focused led tourism, which is how we as a team, especially via Karen, how we are supporting our communities in their development and leading the process of where communities want to go in a space of tourism. Collaborative regional brand awareness and marketing really is our consumer voice. How are we getting the Willamette Valley top of mind? How are we getting the communities to work together and share in that voice? How do we not cannibalize each other's campaigns? Where are you in markets and win? And working to really try and have a collaborative, outgoing message around the Willamette Valley. And then our last priority is for us to lead and support our industry. We also need to be a strong organization. So we have been doing lots of internal work over this year. Little shout out to Stephen and Rebecca in the room, a current president and future president in the room today, supporting us here. And we've been working on lots of SOPs, cleaning up how we do our practices, our financial reporting. I think even the budget that was presented didn't fully balance. Our budgets have been balancing, our processes have been improved. And so overall, we're just really operating at a much higher level than historically had been in the past. So within that strategic plan, we did decide to define for our region what regenerative equity and inclusion means to us, because they might not sit as a standard definition, but also we wanted to make sure that as communities read this, they knew what these values meant to us and how they can see themselves in them. And we really view regenerative tourism as communities leading. When you lead the tourism in your community, it doesn't happen to you, and it keeps resident sentiment strong because the tourism industry is supporting the visitors, supporting the residents as the visitors come through and hopefully leave good economic impact. Equity is recognizing that you cannot approach every situation, every community the same, and that we will have to look at and work as a team about how we serve those communities. And inclusion is really about being intentional, about getting those diverse tables and who your invitation is to have them at the table with you to help tell the diverse stories of the Willamette Valley. So our biennial budget, and I apologize that the numbers might be a little small. So the percent spend is through Q3, so we're like almost through Q4, so there is more spending than recognized in here. The spending by bucket, whether it's destination development or investment fund, brand stewardship, insights and impacts are all pretty comparable year over year. I do want to recognize that I see that we do have a couple buckets that look pretty underspent. At Q3, you should be 73% through your spend. And for destination development, for example, destination stewardship, we're at 6.9. And that's because we have a couple big ticket items that when you're working on community collaborative projects, sometimes your capacity or the decision maker is not within your own walls, and so sometimes that can slow the process. One of our big ticket items, which Karen will dive a little bit more into, is a mountain bike development on BLM land. We are not in a federal administration that is valuing outdoor recreation development at the moment, and they went from a staff of 4 to 1 with more logging charges than they were expecting to have, and so we have a strong community group. We have a strong BLM office who really wants this on the ground, but at the same time has capacity issues, and we're working through those. And so it's one of those things that we're at the point where we're ready for a cultural resource survey, and that RFP for the organization to do that before we send it out to the public needs to be approved by a couple different people who have not had the chance to provide that to us yet. And so, but once there is an RFP and the cultural resource is done, that's a lot of money flying out the door all at once. So that percentage jumps up. We also really sat and viewed our plan of it is a biennium. It is okay that the spend adjusts over 2 years when you're looking at how you spend to the end of this coming fiscal year that we're working through. And knowing that we went to our staff of 4 by August of the new fiscal year, and that is a lot of onboarding time. Onboarding is a lot of time, conversation, where are we going? Here's how we've been doing it. I'm open to hearing how it's better if you have experience in this space. And so there's just a little bit of a slow of productivity as we brought everyone online to give the proper training, because I feel like when you put that training up front, it gets rewarded on the end of momentum faster. So we were in a little bit of onboarding training here. We have, by design, some projects that were intended to be a little underspent, like even our marketing brand stewardship a little underspent, but we were doing a lot more video and photo production this year and moving into larger spins for next year and just looking at those complementary to your production runs. So I'm going to pass it over to Karen. She's going to talk a little bit about destination development. You just tell me next.
Okay. Thanks so much for the opportunity to share some of our work with you. A few of the things that we are excited about in destination development, Tori has already alluded to. The outdoor recreation emphasis of the Valley remains very strong. She mentioned the Gooseneck Mountain Bike Project. That is on BLM land in rural Polk County, so kind of in the triangulation of Dallas and Willamina and Grand Ronde. And so we're really excited about the design of that project. Intended from the start to be fully accessible to adaptive equipment of all kinds, so purpose designed with that in mind. And then, as she said, the trails are drafted, mapped, flagged in the field, and we are waiting for approval from the BLM to be able to send out a cultural resources study RFP. We know about what areas will need to be studied based on the topography and the history. So as soon as we can get that out the door, that'll be a really great step towards actually starting to build trail. We're excited about the economic development that will bring to rural Polk County and to communities that maybe are a little bit underserved in the tourism space. There's really strong partnership happening with the Grand Ronde tribe because it is adjacent to their community, and they have some trail building crews of youth that we're hoping to engage in actually building the trails when that comes around. So really exciting project that's been slowed down by some of the federal situations this year, but we're excited to keep it moving forward. We're also working on a project with the Yamhill River in Yamhill and Polk counties to increase river access for recreation. And we supported several communities in thinking through the Recreation Ready grant process and deciding whether their project was right to apply and just being another resource for them as the regional DMO. And then there's a Recreation Ready project kicking off for this current round in Independence, also around increasing access for non-motorized recreation and accessible recreation on the Willamette River. So great recreation, things coming, and kind of moving away from recreation into more industry service. We had intended to do some industry-focused training this year. Again, building on the accessibility focus that Oregon has had and that the region has had. And in surveying what's available, we realized that what would best serve our community would be to develop a training along the lines of Rose City Certified, following the model that Portland has piloted so successfully. So we've been doing a lot of community listening and assessing what our community needs and the best way to meet that need, and we're ready to go with developing that training over the next fiscal year. Looking ahead to the next year, continuing those existing projects. We're also looking at developing a matching grant program for accessibility in the agritourism space, so helping folks with mobility disabilities get out into U-Pick farms to pick blueberries, or out into our flower farms when those are in season to experience the tulips or the dahlias or the peonies, or even to some of our winery experiences, helping folks get out into the vineyard by funding some Moby mats or a similar product to help people get out and experience agritourism of all disabilities. And then we're also supporting in the coming year a regional FAM focused on sports tourism, and so bringing folks into the region to help promote our sports facilities and encourage our local DMOs that are really active in that space with some support and some regional coordination. We do run a strategic investment fund every year based on our percentage of budget that we receive. And so this last year, we had about $80,000, a little more, to grant out to our community. And so you can see a list of projects here. Our grant program was had a focus of both marketing and development and event and conference support. So we funded a wide variety of projects. A couple that I'm really excited to highlight. After Wheel the World assessed the community of Eugene, one of their sites was the Cascades Raptor Center in Eugene, and they identified as part of that project that they needed to make some accessibility improvements to their location. If you've ever been there on a hillside, some of their paths are not paved, their parking was a little wonky for people with mobility disabilities, perhaps. And so we were able to fund a portion of a project to increase the accessibility of their site. They're rerouting some trails, they're making the grade smoother, they're improving the surface, they're improving drainage and railings. And so it was an exciting way to see some of that accessibility work move through the tourism ecosystem, that they were assessed and they were mapped and they received some suggestions, and then we were able to support them in implementing changes. And so really exciting to see how that work kind of ties together through our whole industry. On a similar vein, we were able to support the initial Ride the Dirt Wave mountain bike event in Alsea Falls this year. It actually happened just this past weekend. And that was an event that started on the coast as a race series to bring folks out into our rural communities and experience new mountain bike regions, and then hopefully extend their stay and check out more than one region. And so this was the first one happening on the east side of the Coast Range. And so bringing support to rural area outside Corvallis and encourage people to experience outdoor recreation and also kind of have a multi-regional impact. And then moving into our global sales space, this year we attended consumer-facing shows in Vancouver alongside the Travel Oregon team, which was great to be able to be a part of that collaboration. We also attended the LA Travel and Adventure Show with partners from Travel Southern Oregon, Clackamas County Office of Tourism, Mount Hood Territory, and Lane County. And so another great collaborative multi-region engagement. And we're looking ahead to next year to decide which markets make sense for us to be in consumer events, and also how to make those more impactful, maybe by marrying some travel trade or media activations, and seeing which markets align with our other efforts, maybe expanding into some new places. We also attended B2B shows, Go West Summit and IPW. Again, IPW is part of the Travel Oregon delegation. And we've also been just doing, as Tori said, some onboarding with site visits to lodging partners and doing a survey to assess needs from our industry and our region, see what kind of training or other support our partners need in this space.
Hi, thank you for having us here today. To talk about our brand stewardship efforts, I'll start with the marketing plan. So we created a marketing plan really to cover a few key goals. One is to increase our audience and enhance our awareness of the Valley, as well as to run campaigns to promote shoulder and off-season travel, as well as create some new compelling content for our owned channels, and then to really become a collaborative partner with our DMOs, RDMOs, and our industry adjacent organizations like the Oregon Wine Board and the Willamette Valley Wineries Association. So we created a marketing plan using the budget spread out over 2 years. The intention is to have year one be more of a foundational year where we're updating our own channels, like evaluating the accessibility of our website, updating our consumer newsletter and website look and feel, and also investing in some content development, so photography, videography, really to sort of capture compelling content to share on our channels. One of the campaigns that we did last year, just to highlight as an example, is a truffle and cellar season campaign. So this was a campaign across all of our channels that focused on truffle and mushroom foraging, cellar season in wineries, unique lodging, and outdoor activities. And this was across some organic social media, a paid meta campaign, and public relations efforts. It's the kind of campaign that we plan to do ongoing, as like integrated across our channels in year two. And then I also manage our public relations efforts, so we work with Lawrence PR as our partner on that. And a few of the top hits from the last year were earned placements in Travel and Leisure, AAA Via Magazine, and Lonely Planet. One that just came out, which was too new to put on the slide, was in Outside Magazine, was just named, Oak Ridge was named one of the best mountain biking destinations in the U.S., so we were excited to hear that. And then one example of a collaborative PR effort was around the Oregon Chardonnay celebration. So this was a collaborative effort with the Yamhill County tourism partners, and they put together a media fam which brought 11 media to the area for the Oregon Chardonnay celebration in February. And it was a good example of a way that that WAVA was able to support that. Really, the work was done by the partners in Yamhill County, and earned some great coverage. We had, for the first time, an editor from Wine Enthusiast was there for the celebration and resulted in some great coverage. So we were very happy with that. And then we are in the process of a PR RFP right now. So we had been working with Lawrence PR for a number of years, decided that it was time to reevaluate that contract. And so we opened an RFP in April, received proposals in May, and we're currently in the process of reviewing those. So we received 14 proposals, and it's a competitive process. They're very exciting to read, and so we're in the process of evaluating those now, and we'll award a contract June 24th. And then I'm going to pass it over to Melissa to talk about social media.
Hi, thank you everybody for having us. Story mentioned, I've been able to grow into my role these past couple of years as full-time social media marketing coordinator this past fiscal. So we brought in social media in-house as before during my time as through an agency. So we've been doing some organization with bringing on a photo dam for our assets that we've had, as well as through social media implementing a link tree where visitors who view our like Facebook and Instagram, that they'll be able to see the articles a little bit easily. We also implemented some UGC partnership that hasn't been done before through social media, and that started off with our annual ornament hunt, which it was our 8th one. We brought in a creator, Bree Santos, who's in the Valley, to kind of showcase that it was happening, and we really liked her work, and we implemented a spring break series that was 3-part that showcased all 3 Mid, North, and South Valley, and they got to showcase some hidden gems that folks didn't know that were in our areas or in our region. Through social media, I think we have the opportunity to showcase our local DMOs, small businesses, and a conversation that we've been having a lot, or we've been saying a lot, is that visitors don't see like county lines. And so we decided to partner with Visit Central Oregon and their social media team by an itinerary that is on their website and our website, as well as through some social media content. As we're known for being a wine destination, and they're currently working on becoming an AVA, we decided to use our strengths to showcase our Mid-Willamette Valley winery experiences as their Central Oregon winery experiences on Highway 22. So as we continue on through the next fiscals, how can we reach out to our other partners, such as the Portland region or the coast, as we're in the middle, on how to showcase a little bit more of that collaboration.
And then in the next fiscal year, some of the public relations efforts that we're going to focus on is, one is coming up in July, is Method Oregon. There's a grand tasting event weekend in July 24th to 26th. So Method Oregon is a new standard that has been developed. It's a nonprofit organization made up of over 50 winemakers in Oregon that have put some standards around sparkling wine, so traditional method sparkling wine. And so it's an exciting group effort. They've come up with these standards where everything it's 100% Oregon grown, produced, and bottled traditional method sparkling wine. And so they have they're having an event in July. It's a 3-day event comprised of some educational events, a grand tasting event with over 40 producers, and then a 3rd day of a choose your own adventure day where people can go out to the wineries. And so it's the kind of effort that we want to be involved in and support, because it is a multi-day effort in the Willamette Valley. It encourages people to stay a little bit longer, to see more of the activities that they can experience. So we will be supporting that. Like I said, it's a group effort similar to what happened with the Oregon Chardonnay celebration. So WAVA will be supporting that too. And then we are also looking for more collaborative PR efforts and in-market activation. So this is going to be something we'll work with our new PR partner on. So it's sort of will be in the works in early the fiscal year, and it will probably align with some of the global sales efforts that Karen was mentioning. So we're really going to try to tie those together in a more concerted effort. And then as far as marketing goes in the next fiscal year, 2 campaigns that I want to talk about. One is an inclusive travel paid campaign. So to sort of build upon the work done by the Wheel the World assessment, we've been able to do some accessibility work on our channels. So we received a Travel Oregon competitive grant last year for digital accessibility for all. And part of that work is getting a website audit done, as well as incorporating more accessible and inclusive content in our channels. And so we're doing that now. One of the things that we're doing is working with content creators that are coming in region to sort of showcase the accessible activities that they can do. They're sharing on their channels as they're in region, and then we'll be following up. We'll be getting content and other assets that we can incorporate into a paid campaign next year. And then the last campaign that I want to talk about is a Highway 99 road trip. So this is, the concept is to get people off of the I-5 corridor to really explore the areas around Highway 99, and can lead to them exploring some lesser known activities and extending the stay even longer. So we partnered with the Journal of Lost Time to produce this content. We had intended for it to be like a 5 to 6 day content trip, but we opened up the invitation to our DMOs to add on an additional day, and we were able to get 4 DMOs to participate. So the production team was here for 10 days over 2 trips, and highlighted over 30 locations in the valley. So we are very excited about that content and feel like it's going to be something that we can use for years to come. Yeah, so those will be rolling out over the next few weeks, really. We've got them pretty close to launching. So
that's a little preview photo on the slide of the stargazing on the jet boats out of Newburgh. Okay, so insights and impacts. This is back to that element of like how we are serving our visitor industry. And when I came back on board and I'm reading what WAVA's done and what the plan was presented and reviewing our tourism industry partner tips surveys that Travel Oregon does in cadence of our planning cycles, is that there was a lot of commentary in the open question feedback of like, we don't know who you are, what do? You seem ineffective. And so this year was really like, we gotta get back out and show people what we do and all the work we are doing, because it is making a difference. And so we did issue our first ever annual report out to the community. It was a really big accomplishment on the wish list even when I was staff before. And so that was really exciting to get out. And so we're gonna be moving into year 2's annual report here soon, reporting on this fiscal year. Karen has really dialed our industry newsletter to like 11. I mean, I have a lot of people saying it's their favorite industry newsletter to receive anymore. It's just so robust. We've provided trainings with accessible tourism ambassador training from the work out of Southern Oregon University, and partnered with the Willamette Valley Wineries Association, and had it be a little bit more like wine tasting room focused. From an industry that said they really want to figure out what their roles and how to support this accessible tourism space. We just finished a grant smithing workshop with the Travel Oregon grants team in Albany on June 3rd. We've been doing a lot of site visits out in community. Like, I have a new team who needs to know what the communities are, what's your story, what's the parts of the story you want told, where are the areas you want talked about. And so just Friday, we spent all day out in the McKenzie looking and learning about the McKenzie River Discovery Center, a project very similar to what we're in today of what they could develop out there. And their community track, and got to raft the river and see that experience. That's so key out there. And so every time we get out to go out into our communities, helps our team better understand and better incorporate all that content into our consumer-facing channels, and help Karen in that we lead our destination development from a space of lead, collaborate, advocate, and so she can track the projects that are happening and find grant cycles and help share to communities from an advocacy standpoint. And then we have our certain projects that we're working on where she's leading the charge. And
The other thing we're getting ready to embark on is a data investment of, like, we're so grateful for the Dean Runyon report that Travel Oregon produces. I do have a lot of DMOs that are funded by a city boundary and not a county boundary. So we're looking at investing in extra reporting from Dean Runyon that gets that down to the city level. So as you heard in the legislative update today, that all of our DMOs jobs are about to get a lot harder to keep their contracts, keep their funding streams. And so if they can report their economic impact based on their funding boundary, I think they have a stronger argument. And they can compare it to the county and say, I'm Albany, and this is our economic impact, and you can see that that's 80% of Lynn counties when you look at Lynn County. You know, I think, so providing some data to help them do their job and defend their money and keep being partners in this space. And so looking ahead, as I kind of mentioned, we're gonna keep doing our annual report, continue to provide industry trainings. We've also, based on some conversations in boot camp, it can be a little overwhelming when you join the tourism industry of what's out there. And so we're working on, like, what are these onboarding toolkits or resources we can provide of, like, hey, welcome to the industry. Here's 3 newsletters you should sign up for. And did you know this? And here's Travel Oregon's industry site. Here's our industry page. Here's the alphabet of acronyms in our industry. You know, all the things like that that we can provide and help people get integrated faster. And so we'll continue that year-over-year economic impact data as well, investment. So moving into wine country license plate. Region 2 consists of Clackamas, Lynn, Lane, and Benton counties. And if you're familiar with a map, it's a very interesting region, particularly when you're promoting to a consumer. So the planned goal is to highlight the unique wine and culinary scene of each county. And we are not presenting this as a region to consumers, but allowing each county to own their story and itinerary and invite influencers in to share and supplement and expand out both the local DMO production and our promotion of these areas. So this past year we had 92,000. This is actually a larger than normal allocation. When I came back on, and we were working through my first fiscal year, we actually asked Travel Oregon if we could roll over a year of wine country plate so we could really focus on cleaning up our regional cooperative tourism programming work and then bring back on wine country plate. So this is what a 2-year allocation would look like issued in 1 year, and we have 2 years to spend it. And so this year, same thing as is kind of what we're working through with our RCTP budget on a biennium of being like, this is going to be a heavy production year, and our seasonal campaigns on 0% spend because we are building those campaigns for this coming fiscal year. And this is a region where also many of the wineries are open on a more seasonal structure, so we also might not be able to market them 12 months of the year because they might not be open, so that's not when we're going to talk about them. And so basically, this year's big program has been inviting influencers in a wine and culinary-based itinerary that follows within each county, not necessarily connecting the counties as a region to visit on the consumer side. And so we have completed 3 of the 4 FAMs. The 4th FAM in Benton County will be completed by the end of this month. Each influencer came in and posted live on the ground. They had to do kind of a voiceover highlight reel, and they had to produce photo and video assets that we could purchase and repackage and reuse for promotion for future years. So year 2, we are actually even a little underspent on our influencer line, so we have room to either invite more influencers or invite more photo and video production to help build out our seasonal assets so we can continue hosting, building photo work, and then plan our allocation priorities. So we'll be bringing our committee back together of what are the channels that are helpful for you, what are the markets that are helpful for you, so that we can make sure we're driving visitation through the doors of our wine and culinary partners in these counties. So, does the group have any questions?
Tori and team, great job. Commissioners, before opening it for questions, I want to reground us in what Harry had said when he came up. The initial award of this contract with the Willamette Valley Visitors Association was for 1 year because there were some questions in place. I will tell you, Harry did, but I just want to reiterate and emphasize the staff are not just satisfied, but incredibly comfortable and very impressed by the strides that have been taken by the Willamette Valley Visitors Association, Tori and this team, to address any questions or concerns that have been brought up, and we are wholeheartedly recommending that we extend their agreement now to be in full alignment with all the other tourism regions. That is formal action that you will be asked to take at tomorrow's meeting, but today is your opportunity to ask any further questions that you may have of Tori and the team. So with that, I'll open it up. Heather?
I have more of a comment as a constituent of WAVA and experiencing the transition in the last 2 to 3 years of your team has been really incredible. You guys show up places, but you also trust in the people doing the work on the ground, and I think that that's really important. And I think it's how you've been successful in representing a physically very large space with diverse tourism assets, as well as really, really small communities with very limited resources. So, good job.
I just want to say the same thing. I remember you before us last June, and to see where you are today with an entire team and what this amazing team has been able to accomplish is so incredibly impressive. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments at this time? Chair Willits.
I have a quick question. Lots of successes on that grant cycle within your region. Is there any work being done to showcase the successes to the legislators of that area or city governments? What is the work being done to showcase all the great work you're doing? Somebody is seeing that work. Is everybody seeing that work?
I'm sure there's always more eyes to see it.
Yeah.
I think like Kate did help build those regional, like one sheets for
Yeah.
the legislative session about like how do you tell your story and where are your tourism dollars at work, right? Like that missing element of people knowing that like there's tangible change on the ground happening. It's not just pretty pictures in a magazine. I think as we balance the regional need, I have some communities where that local DMO has such a strong relationship that sometimes I'm worried if I go in, I might confuse that state representative of like, why are there 2 of you? And do you need to have funding? And so, so we do kind of let the DMOs who have the capacity to have those relationships lead, and I can kind of fill in certain areas, or if I have a DMO whose board is like, it's too sticky, we're not gonna let you advocate because we don't wanna for fear of our contract, and I can kind of step in and be like, here's a voice that you can't hear, and here's this power dynamic. And even my public comment during the legislative session just called it out flat of like, this is why I am here, because I don't receive this funding. And so I think there's more work to be done. So I don't think we have a perfect answer on that. It does go out in our industry news, but that's still kind of speaking to our industry. And so I think building on, Karen's got this great messaging out, so how do we either send it to legislators? How do we talk to the DMO of like, can you help share this story too if you have this strong relationship? So I think we have improvement there to be made, but I think we have a good foundation of like, we do have these projects going on and they are getting work done and making sure that we tell the story stronger.
Thank you. It sounds like thoughtful case by case.
Yeah.
Great job. Thank you.
Jen.
I'm just curious if you could give us any feedback for how the process has gone for you. If you felt expectations were made clear, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, we are not the first region to have a conditional contract awarded. There is some precedent that has happened in the past, and that's just stuff changes. There wasn't a leader. What's this going to look like? And we just you're trying to be thoughtful of how you're allocating tax money, which I totally get. I really appreciated the process. Harry and I had regular check-ins about how things were going. Him and Kevney work with us as well of, yes, you're gonna have an extra presentation to the commission, but we're not trying to add a whole workload of like, you need to make this fancy plan or you need to do a whole bunch of extra steps. And so that's what I appreciated of, well, you're already building your budget, now translate your budget into a few slides and let's just talk about it to the commission. And so I didn't feel like it was an unreasonable amount of work, and it was well communicated what my expectations were. So like kudos to Harry and Kate and Stephanie for helping us through that process.
Any suggestions?
I mean, I don't think so. I know that there are commissioners who weren't here last June, so like probably I would, framing out for those new commissioners of like, what this is and hoping that you guys all had a pretty solid orientation of what that looked like. But
Okay, thank you.
All right. Please.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Tori and team. I really appreciate the focus and the diligence and the vision and the mission focused on regenerative and equity and inclusion. I'm really excited about the 2031 plan you mentioned too. It's just stellar, and you're showing accountability too in all your plans. And I just had a curiosity about the cellar season promotion and what that is about. And then I also want to say I look forward to the reference guide to acronyms. I think
the ABCs of tourism.
Harry is masterful at acronyms in his presentations. Harry, you are, and I'm sure Harry the Fourth is already speaking in acronyms. I'm scratching my head going, what is OWC LPTBP?
I can't get that one right either.
So, thank you.
Do you want to speak to cellar season? Or? Sure. Yeah.
So the Cellar Season campaign is really a time from basically like wine country Thanksgiving all the way through February was really when we kept our campaign running. So it was a time when it's usually slower in wineries, and it's a great time to invite visitors in to maybe have a different experience where they can meet the winemaker. There's less, there's less crowds. It's easier to get in and have maybe a longer, more immersive experience. So that was what we highlighted. And it was, again, it was on our organic social media as well as paid meta campaigns, and then some PR outreach at the same time. So it's just a quiet time when people are, our wineries are welcome to extra visitation. They'll take, welcome anybody who wants to come in. And so that has been a focus of our winter campaigns for many years. It's kind of one of our core campaigns that we'll continue to do. It's a very important time.
It's brilliant, a brilliant shoulder season promotion. And Harry, you're not off the hook on that acronym. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the 50% that's distributed in regions and one country recipients, separate from the grants process associated with wine country license.
I know I've heard it before, and I just needed the reminder. Thank you, Harry.
Any other questions or comments at this time?
Just a comment. Tori, I watched you from afar when you were in Grants Pass, and you did a phenomenal job there. And I knew last year, kind of going into this, you were building your team. And I want to applaud you just, not taking the status quo, going out for new RFPs, for contracts, and being resourceful with your resources. So it's a great job there.
Thank you.
All right, Tori and team, thank you very
you.
much. Guess we'll see you in the morning. Commissioners, our third and final presentation and discussion item for today is regarding the competitive grant program. And as the team is coming up, is a little bit of a just reminder, just to kind of level set. This is in response to a request made by the commission in adopting our 25-27 budget that we open the large grant program. And our stewardship investment team has been forthcoming in pretty much every meeting we have had since then in providing proposed timelines, proposed guidelines for the program, et cetera. And now we are at the point that they're prepared to provide you with an additional update that is going to lead to much more commission engagement, as, again, we had discussed at the Governor's Tourism Conference. So I am going to turn this over to our VP of Destination Stewardship, Kevin Dugan, our Director of Stewardship Investments, Michelle Woodard, and our Grants Manager, Deb Vaughn.
Thank you. Take just a moment to make sure that I can access my notes so I don't say something, oh, thank you, Matthew, untoward. Fantastic. Hi, Commissioners. It's great to be back with you and provide a window into the opportunities that we received through the open submission process for the large-scale investment program. At today's briefing, you will be able to ask questions of our staff surrounding the process and internal committee conversation about the letters of intent. You also have time to collectively discuss any considerations that you might have as you weigh the decision of which, if any, entities you may want to invite to submit a full application and at what amount you would like to consider them for funding. As a reminder, all funded projects should offer potential to extend the visitor season, increasing spending and opportunities for year-round employment. We intentionally used the phrase extend the visitor season to allow each destination to define the time period that best aligns with their visitor flow. And we received positive feedback that our choice not to use the term shoulder season achieved the goal of allowing flexibility for our applicants. The letter of intent stage of the grant cycle, the LOI, was open for 3 weeks in April after announcing the guidelines in early March through our industry newsletter. During those 2 months, the investments team focused on applicant support through a variety of ways. Number one, we offered topic-specific webinars related directly to the grant program. They were recorded and collectively received over 200 views by the LOI submission deadline. 2, we participated in broader conversations with funders events in collaboration with other grant makers. These meetings helped raise broad awareness of Travel Oregon's work as well as of this specific grant cycle. Number 3, I hosted 15 individual conversations with applicants who reached out to me directly and provided individualized support and coaching. And 4, with the help of the rest of the investments team, and frankly, many other staff members at Travel Oregon who referred projects and provided information, we responded to what feels like countless emails. It was really evident through this time that there was a lot of interest in this program. And the investments team worked really hard to ensure that broad awareness about the opportunity and also of future opportunities. We anticipate our next funding cycle will continue to support requests to extend the visitor season at a more modest scale with requests around $150,000 that's more achievable for most applicants. So a total of 62 LOIs was submitted, and of those, 59 met the published eligibility criteria. The projects represented every tourism region of the state through proposals from 17 different counties. Projects showed $166 million in unmet funding need. With a budget of just $5 million for this grant cycle, this amount is substantial. Finally, likely due in part to the outreach in the previous slide, nearly 30% of submissions were from organizations applying to Travel Oregon for the first time. This is a very exciting level of increased awareness of our work around the state. So before we move to your discussion, I'd like to turn it to Michelle to offer some broader learnings from the cycle so far.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thanks, Deb. Deb shared with you so far some of the facts and the figures of this grant, but there isn't enough time for her to dive deeply into the content of her conversations. And that's really where the human connection takes place in these projects. It's the people that are committed to their organization, the mission, and their communities that make these projects come to life. I want to recognize and applaud those who submitted and shared their projects with us. Even if a project isn't on this list of 7 that's being shared today, the very fact that Travel Oregon understands the work that's being done is extremely valuable. As an agency, it's important for us to be thoughtful and reflective in our programming. We intentionally created this letter of intent process to give staff and you a window into what projects are happening and where there may be opportunity for investment. Upon initial review, we found it was challenging for a single proposal to achieve the metric for statewide impact, but a number of projects were able to show strong opportunity in other categories. We also recognize that we need to continue to assess when we are comfortable making investments, at what phase or what point in a project. For many of these projects, it was challenging to see if impact was going to be made in that 2-year window. A high number of these projects had a strong potential for regional or local impact, and that allows us an opportunity to look for ways to support them in future cycles. And finally, the large volume of requests for sports tourism-focused projects, as well as the arts and culture sector, provide an opportunity to have greater agency strategic conversations about how to best support these key community-identified priority areas as we move forward.
Thank you, Michelle. It really is the people and the passion behind all of this process that make the difference. And as we move into a closer look at these LOIs, which is a very technical part of the process, it's important to keep those people in mind, some of whom may be watching or listening to this update along with you. On this slide is a reminder of why you received in your packet a scale of request ranges rather than fixed request amounts. Submissions at the LOI stage included information from the applicants about their intended use of funds and the scale of their project budget, which you may now use to inform your decision. This framework successfully allowed 59 applicants of many different sizes to define for us what that catalytic investment would look like for them. And we encourage you to keep in mind, as we've said all along, that impact often has more to do with how a project transforms a destination, the value added through partnerships, and the confidence boost that comes from the endorsement of receiving a Travel Oregon grant, no matter the size. So to arrive at this slide, which was also provided in your packet, a committee made up of 7 members of the extended leadership team from across departments at Travel Oregon highlighted the projects you see as the most timely opportunities for the Commission to consider for investment in this cycle. While their industry expertise helped lift and filter LOI submissions, this is only a tool to aid in your deliberations. It is ultimately your decision which entities, if any, you invite to submit a full application, and then at what request amount. In the packet you received ahead of time, there was additional information about the LOIs, and you were provided the opportunity to review any of the submissions in full prior to this meeting. And at this time, we'd like to open the floor for your discussion. We are here to provide context about that committee discussion if needed, as well as answer any questions about the process. Chair Willits.
Do I get to go first? All right. Thank you, and thank you for the quick discussion there. Do you need additional verbiage or assistance with statewide benefit? It seems like there could be a hang up there a little bit. Do you see a need for tourism in there, or financial, or something, some additional guidelines, or is it broad enough? Does it work for the group and for these applicants?
Yeah, I can speak to, and I think we put this in the introduction in your packet, that the committee discussed, so we purposely used quite a broad definition. We did not specifically define the type of statewide impact that we were seeking. And the committee discussed opportunities for statewide impact through a variety of different types of projects and proposals. And ultimately, you'll see in your packet, did not identify a single project as meeting any of their own definitions of what benefiting the entire state would look like. Mm-hmm. So I think the decision is up to you. Kevney, do you want to offer any additional context from that discussion?
Yeah, I would just say, there's a couple different ways you can look at it. And I think as we propose, there's looking at individual projects to collectively meet a statewide impact. There's also the latitude you have about looking at air service and how the trickle across the state can benefit statewide impact. So to me, there's a benefit of I'm going to use the word vague, of like how, you yourself interprets that. and then collectively, does the program have that impact? I think, you know, there's people who believe the Oregon Coast Trail is a marketing asset that draws people to this state and hence creates statewide impact. And so I think that's some of the filter and layer that you as commissioners can put on this of what is that statewide impact and how do you guys define that?
Okay. But for your process, it worked. The broad definition worked. Okay. And then in terms of outreach, 30% of submissions were new to Travel Oregon. What was that outreach? What did it look like from internal? How did you identify people to reach out to?
Oh, so our outreach efforts were more, we didn't invite people to apply to us specifically, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
So we didn't solicit
Yeah.
directly from new applicants. The slide that I showed about the webinars and the conversations with funders and all the discussions, the conversations staff had when they were out in the field, I think those all raised awareness about this program and about Travel Oregon's funding.
Mhm.
And then those applicants came to us because they saw the potential for
Mhm.
themselves to be represented in this particular portfolio.
Great. And what was the best avenue for sharing with the state that this was open? Did you hear back from people? We heard it from an RDMO partner, from a newsletter. What was the best source?
We didn't collect that information
Okay.
in the application process, so I don't have details.
Okay.
But what I can say anecdotally is that I know, because I got referrals in my inbox from other staff members, oh, here, I talked to this person and I'm sending them to you for questions. And so I know that it was a group effort in making sure that there was awareness. And I'm certain that our RDMO partners were involved because we had been speaking with them about this program at the quarterly RDMO meetings from the time that we knew you all were interested in it. So they've been closely connected.
Okay.
I would just add, I think the public nature of this process, I think it's, you know, we're on the 4th or 5th commission meeting where this is being discussed, I think also helped, you know, people become aware that this is going on and in turn reach out to us for more information. But there was no specific outreach done as much as the public nature of the process has allowed that many new applicants to come forward and show interest.
Cool. Thank you. My final comment is looking into the room. When you say based on a committee discussion, it was a heck of a committee you had discussing this, and thank you for throwing importance on that and having those people in the room. I appreciate that.
It was a big lift. 62, 59 that went to committee was a large number.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments at this time? Harish.
For the outreach, was there any specific, I guess what I'm trying to understand is I've never seen this many, which is good, but it's like almost a buzzword, arts and culture and sports. You've never seen this many before, and I don't see any core tourism or something like that. Is it that the message went out was different, or they heard something different?
I would say, and I might ask Michelle to add to this, but I would say that this is, so the last competitive grant cycle, we had 250 LOIs, 240, I think. So I'm not surprised at this number of LOIs. And I do think we saw a high number of sports tourism proposals. Most of them were focused on facility improvements. There are not a lot of grant programs available for infrastructure investment or capital construction, and sports facilities require that to operate. And so I think that this program offered a unique opportunity for the potential for a substantial construction investment, which is rare in the funding world. I also think one of the reasons that this hit a lot of people's inboxes is because of the high dollar amount. I anticipated this. The funding environment broadly right now is extremely challenging. Every resource is strapped, and every organization is struggling to meet their revenue goals in terms of contributed income. So I think that the dollar figure and the price tag was a big incentive for a lot of people to come forward with a big idea. Michelle, do you want to speak to that?
I mean, I would second what Deb had said. I think the only other addition I would make is just these had to be larger scale investments, and they also had to have some sort of capital to match on some of these. And so that often will lessen the number that we see apply for these types of programs. And I think it was eye-opening for us to see, especially in that sports market, who's coming in to apply. One, they have some capital and they need infrastructure investment. And we also in this program have a pretty tight turnaround for where we wanted to see impact. And so, again, completion of different facilities, there can be that economic return that takes place in a more effective, quicker avenue. So I think that's what we saw through some of this program.
And I'm also, I'll expose my ignorance. I don't know how this part of Portland and Eugene Airport and everything works, but is there any criteria on their financial side? Because for Portland, as I understand, I could be wrong, airlines put hundreds of millions of dollars in there. So is there something that taken into account that these applicants have their own resources and own finance, or anybody qualifies?
Sure. So we didn't, at the LOI stage, we just asked for applicants to provide us with estimated figures. That's why the numbers you see in your packet say estimated earned income or secured income, estimated remaining income required. At the application stage, we'll ask all of the applicants to provide us with a much more detailed and specific budget. So I can't speak specifically to where all of these projects will be pulling their match from, but they all have clear enough indications that they are able to achieve the match through a variety of different means.
Yeah, the only addition I would make to that, Commissioner Patel, is just there was nothing that was qualifying or disqualifying based on budgets and availability of funds. And so I think, again, the way we approached the cycle was to ensure there was equity across the state. And so we were looking at, hey, a minimum request of at least $500,000 that needed to be matched in some way one-to-one. So that's where our initial budget parameters were stemming from. But to Deb's point, we didn't look into detailed financials as in terms of any of the entities submitting this. I think you can make estimates, right, from who you see on paper and what potential budgets would look like.
Thank you.
But to your point, if these 7 move forward, we would see all of that information submitted to the commission for review.
Correct. We wouldn't necessarily see their full organizational financial statement, but we would ask them for a detailed project budget that lists income, projected revenue sources, and projected expenses by line item. So we would have more detail about where the funds were coming from and where our funds were going.
Great, thank you. Clearly, I guess an observation is there's a clear demand. Todd and I were just talking about arts, culture, and events. So a real need there. And having served on the RDO committee in 2024, I have just a small sense of the work that took. And so I really want to thank the committee from going from 59 to 7. Such hard work. It's personal work too, right? These are all good projects, and to have to take a look at all of them and decide what really impacts the entire state is a really difficult decision. So I applaud you for the work that you've done so far, and now we get to do the difficult work going forward. So thanks.
I do want, Commissioners, I just want to let you know, today's our day to ask specific questions about each of these projects if you have them. Tomorrow will be more a day to formulate a vote of which organizations move on to the next phase. And then to that point, Deb and Michelle and Kevney, the time involved with reviewing the formal application goes up quite a bit.
Yeah, I can speak to that on the, just give you an idea of what the next steps look like, and that might help inform your decision. I won't go into a lot of detail, but there is time on the meeting agenda tomorrow during commission business for you to take action on approving the list of entities you want to move forward to a full application, and to determine the maximum request amount for each of them, which can be customized. You don't have to say the same maximum amount for each. You can, we have a mechanism by which we can customize that. Some of them, these projects are not operating at a large scale, and their budget in their LOI showed that $500,000 would work well for them. So you have that flexibility. And then what will happen is on Wednesday, the following day, the application will open online for those applicants you select. So our team is standing by and ready to communicate with those invited applicants, as well as the LOIs that are not invited to move forward. So they're aware of their status. And then once those applications are submitted, July 1st, our staff will review them to make sure that they're complete and that they're, all of their files are readable and that they're ready to go. And then by July 27th, those will all be available to you in the online portal. You can review them on your own time, anytime between July 27th and August 27th. So the time commitment for all of you that I am recommending is to set aside at least 1 hour per applicant that you invite forward during that month. So we hope that, again, my thanks for the kind of extended timeline that this process has taken, but it was a priority not only for us to have time at the front end, but for us to make sure you all had time at this point to schedule so that you can all be a part of that process. And then what will happen between August 27th and the September commission briefing is we will do a synthesis and summary of your online scores and present you with a packet very much like the one that you received today, probably with some more detail because we'll have it available. And you'll have that opportunity then to deliberate in the briefing and then take action at the commission meeting to make final award decisions.
Thank you.
I have some general and specific questions. Generally, this is just kind of housekeeping. Let's say we go through this process. We have a certain amount of money statutorily we have to give out, correct?
We have an amount of money available to give out.
Okay.
Based on the budget, based on the intake from the TLT.
Sure.
That we have, but we also have carryover opportunity.
Okay. So there isn't a minimum amount we must give out in the grant cycle.
No.
Okay. Okay.
We're going to continue to have grant programs. And so that's why, again, we left the option open in this cycle for you to determine whether or not you wanted to award funds in this program. There's a lot of folks have submitted proposals. So if you decide not to award funds, that funds would go to our next grant cycle, which we are intending to open in the fall.
Okay.
Nick, if I may, first of all, just to reemphasize what you just heard Michelle say, we are required by statute to have 10% of our dollars go into our competitive grant program. And so if they're not all awarded through this particular grant cycle, they will roll into the next grant cycle. Okay, so they will remain within the competitive grant program. The other aspect of that I do think is worth noting, just for your consideration when you get to the point about, well, how much do we want to invite, for the folks that we're going to invite to move forward, how much do we want to ask them to apply for? This commission, because you are the budget-making authority for the Oregon Tourism Commission, for Travel Oregon, you have the ability to also encumber funds for future grant cycles. So if you were to decide you wanted to spend more than the $5 million that's currently allocated for this program, you would have the ability to do that as well. Should you find enough projects that you deem worthy, meet the criteria, et cetera, at this level, this $500,000 and up, you also have that ability as well. So it can work either way.
And so I guess, is that how functionally the Port of Portland's ask would work? Because they're asking for 2.5 over 2 separate cycles.
I can speak specifically to their request, or I can actually go back a little bit in time to 2017 and talk about the World Athletics Championship request, because they approached Travel Oregon with the idea of $20 million, and candidly, even the grant program at that time would not have, over the course of the 4 years we had, fully funded $20 million. So we set up some resource from our program budget that was specific to the World Athletics Championships. And we opened this kind of grant program, the commission did, with $2.5 million in it, fielded inquiries and proposals, reviewed those, and awarded $2.5 million that were in that grant cycle, the $2.5 million to the World Athletics Championships, not only for that year, but for the next 3 years. So again, that's how it worked with the World Athletics Championships. That's how it could work with in some ways, any of these projects, potentially. Again, that may be something you want to explore in a proposal if in any way they could be broken out.
Okay, specific questions. I guess one question I have about the Corvallis pool is about capacity for sales and marketing. It's a school district. Do they have the ability to sell and market a tourism asset like that? Is that within our purview of consideration?
I'm not going to answer that question specifically.
Sure. Is that the right kind of question to ask?
You seemed to address it to your peers. I will say that level of detail of information we didn't address in the LOI stage. We wanted to keep it an easy opportunity for projects to come forward, knowing that it would be likely quite competitive. So there is a question in the application that is more focused on organizational capacity, and so that might be better. You will receive additional information about these entities and their ideas that you decide to invite forward through the application. I do not remember that being discussed specifically in the committee review.
Commissioner Pearson, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Can you repeat your question one more time just so I understand it?
Oh, my question was, the organization is a school district, and do they have the capacity to actually sell and market a tourism asset to events out of state, nationally, et cetera, like the proposal says?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would add that, this topic, this project has been brought up by Visit Corvallis before. And so I think to Deb's point, that's some of the information you would find out in a complete application, but it's, because the lead applicant is the school district, because it owns the asset, that is not the only partner in the project, but those details would be more, they would be fleshed out in a full application process.
Maybe from a structure standpoint, I think a lot of these specific questions probably will be answered. Is it better to give you what some of those specific project questions are for the projects we want to move forward so they can answer them ahead of time, or read their application and ask follow-ups?
I think because these meetings are public, I think questions that you have are good to put on the public record. What we will likely do for the applicants that move forward is refer them back to this meeting as they move ahead into their application, so that they can be thinking about some of the curiosities that you all have in reviewing a proposal. So I would say speaking them into the record this is a great opportunity to do that.
I'll just add, I think, the reason that we're having this is there enough interest from you as a body to decide that you want those applications to come in from those groups? There's a fine line through the LOI process of not asking someone to write a novel to throw their name in the hat. And the reason we're here today is to try to inform you the best we can about, do you want to invite them to do more work? Sure. And so there's a lot of specific questions I would encourage you to ask for the points Deb made about public process, but at the same time, that's really the next gate here is, are these projects interesting to you enough that you would ask them to take the time to submit a full application?
I guess I would like to comment to my fellow commissioners. If we decide to move these 7 forward because of the changes in public meeting law, I would like to see all applicants come before this commission and make a presentation. I mean, these are big dollars that are being requested. So that's something that would, I think, be really important to me for this process. And forgive me if that's already in here and I missed it. So
you saw my face.
yes, I saw your face. I'm like, darn it, Deb, I missed it.
No, thank you. I realize that I live in this space at work all day, every day, and you come to it once a quarter when we get to meet. So yes, thank you. That was something on the the next step slides that I didn't go into detail about. But yes, it was published in the guidelines that all invited applicants will work with our staff to record a presentation that will be shown to you and to the public at that commission meeting. The reason we chose to record those is an issue of equity. Specifically, the September meeting is in Ashland, and we did not want the expectation that all of the applicants from across the state would be available to come and make a public presentation. Speaking in front of groups can be quite unnerving for some people, and we certainly didn't want comfort level in a setting such as this to unfairly disadvantage a particular project. So we will work with them to have that opportunity so that they can speak to you and to the public, but in a more controlled, equitable setting where they have the opportunity to put their best foot forward and share the impacts.
Sorry, I have more opinions. I know you're shocked by this. I think that they should be available even virtually if we have questions, unless there is we put another meeting into this where they're doing we're reviewing them from July 27th to August 27th. And then if we have questions as commissioners, getting those questions answered. I don't know if we could send those in advance and they can include that in the video. But personally, I think, again, this is a large sum of money. And I think that we as a commission, these are big dollars. We want to be responsible with them. And if this commission has questions about those projects, we should be able to ask them either in the meeting or virtually.
And I completely agree with you. Thank you.
If I may, I'd like to go back to matching dollars. And there are a few of the applicants that you've shared from the 9 that have been highlighted from the total number of applicants presented today that I question whether they're able to provide matching resources supporting the grant opportunity based on organizational operating expenses and organizational totals. So I think it would be helpful in looking at all the organizations that are presenting that we might look at that opportunity to see and understand if they are able they have the solvency as well as the infrastructure to support the grants that we're considering for their organization. Is that a possibility?
Yeah. Whatever you all need to make the decision, I think is what we want to help get to. I will, in case it wasn't clear, what is in this packet is not the full LOI that we received, right? This is a roll-up summary. So there was additional budget narrative provided by each of these organizations. That was part of the committee's review. The rubric, one of the categories they assessed was the viability of the project as related to the organizational financial information that we had available at the time. So that was certainly part of the first stage of the review in bringing these to you. I think it's fair that there are additional questions. That is what the application stage would be for applicants to present additional information through the process we've developed. All of the questions and requirements have been published in the guidelines and shared out publicly, and then bring those to the next stage of consideration. And Commissioner DeNova, I hear you on your desire to be able to be in contact with applicants, and I think we'll work through whatever public meeting rules we need to put in place to make sure that that can happen.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think for the example of the RDMO process, it was a different set of public meeting laws, so we're able to do things a little bit differently than we are today. So I just thank you for acknowledging that it's important.
Yeah, and I'll add, Commissioner Gremmels, that was a big part of the review process, was looking at operating budgets, looking at their budget detail, what they had matching, what they were able to commit to, and then in turn the viability of the project, right? And a lot of conversation about at what stage does it make sense for Travel Oregon to support a project. Do you want to be the first dollar in, the last dollar in? A lot of good dialogue. So the fact that these are in front of you were indicative to the group that those matches felt confident to us based on what we were shared, but there's a lot more detail to these that you can dive into to build that confidence for yourself. But
thank you.
We wouldn't have brought these forward had we as a committee not felt confident about what we saw as a match within the budget narrative that they had shared with us.
Thank you.
Kevney, maybe along that whole line, one of the concerns I have is permitting. And for example, the trail organization, the Oregon Coast Trail Foundation, and really all of them, do they have to demonstrate that they have at least a permit in process? That can hang a project up for so long. And so I'm just curious, how do you know those pieces? Or do you?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. I mean, I know that when I reviewed it, that was a big consideration I had in reading about whether that, you know, not only if there was a permit in place that they were talking about it, but then two, who are the partners that were part of the project? So in the terms of the Oregon Coast Trail Foundation, some of these projects are within city limits, and knowing that the communities they're operating in, there is broad support from the DMO as well as the city. You know, in this LOI process, they don't have to share a finalized permit. Those details may come in an application process, but at this phase, you're looking at who are the partners. Is there a city partner knowing that trail is going to be in their backyard? And do you have the level of confidence that the partnerships at the table are not going to create those barriers? And again, it's all part of that evaluation of, there were some that I read that, you know, you felt like, man, we are 5 years from being able to put a shovel in the ground. And that was, I think, for the whole committee, some of the considerations they made.
Okay, thank you.
I think for me personally, I'm comfortable with the list that you've brought forward. Frankly, I know that you've spent way more time than this commission has, right, on the applications. And so I think there's a solid list here. I think, you know, the commission should consider reviewing that list, and we haven't made a decision yet, and so we've got much more work to do. We can all go back and look at the full packets on each one of these, and we can wait for the application, the video, again, more questions, but I'm very pleased with the 7 applications that you have brought forth to this commission.
Do we need to pick a funding amount today?
Tomorrow.
Yeah, you'll need to take action tomorrow.
How did you land on these 7? Like, was there we're choosing 7, or there was a natural break in rankings? Just.
I mean, yeah, I'll share my experience. Yeah, so everybody individually read and then scored, and then we evaluated from there. And as Deb talked about, it was a 8-hour meeting, 8-hour day, 7-hour day, talking and evaluating, and everything from, again, last dollar in, how close are they, all of the things you could imagine, and really, really healthy conversation. And it was not easy, you know, but we also recognized, you know, to bring 30 forward is a big ask from all of you. So where do you draw the line of what we want to bring forward? What's reasonable for you to move forward from here? We did have the conversation about what is statewide impact, and is there a desire to look at multiple projects that inevitably create that statewide impact, or do you want one project that tries to create statewide impact? So again, as I was kind of getting at earlier, there was, I'm not going to say, I think we had said earlier, maybe less than 10 was our hope to bring to you. And when we finally got done with that process, we all felt confident that this was the right list of 7. But I do want to say, and I hopefully it doesn't open Pandora's box, like, you have a right to look at the full list and say, you know what, like, I want to see an application from them as well. And this is just our recommendations from what we reviewed. But there is latitude there that you guys have to push back, ask for more, cut the list down. As we just discussed, what funding level you're asking them to come forward with are all the decisions that you guys can deliberate on, and then come back with a recommendation, and then we will take that forward back to the applicants.
Yeah, to be maybe more explicit about the process, we very intentionally wanted to make sure that you had a list of all the LOIs that came in, and we also wanted to provide that to you in a way that you could digest it without having to read all of them. You don't have 8 hours to sit in a meeting and talk about them. But we wanted to be very transparent with you and with the public what the full portfolio looked like for your consideration. And yes, any of the LOIs that you would like to look at from the entire packet, we are happy to provide that. That is your opportunity. The committee really took their responsibility seriously to help filter that very large pool to share with you a place to start your conversation, and trusted that you would take it to a very thoughtful place from there.
Can you give me a little more context over the unanswered question space on the Port of Portland?
Yeah, let us pull up the notes for that. I will just say, process-wise, that the unanswered question, so as the committee was discussing, they frequently would begin with, what were the strengths? Where did we really see this proposal align with the rubric and the published criteria for the grant? And then they would inevitably move to questions that they had, just as you did immediately, about capacity and what do I not see that I would like to know. So this is a synthesis of the notes from that conversation that I'll turn over to Kevney to start.
Yeah, and if there's a specific part of the feedback, like highlight it. I know that some of the conversation was around not specifically saying what port or where the airline would be coming from or what the airline is. I think though that I've learned there's confidentiality around that. So I think there was some intentionally vague language to sort of say we want to do this, but we can't say exactly what airport we're going to land at or who the airline is, and there's confidentiality there. So I think that was just one thing we talked about as a group of, it always feels better when you're granting dollars and you want to make sure they seek their intended impact, that you have all the details you can. And in this case, there's a high level of confidence that they have something lined up, but that was a conversation we had. I'm trying to look at the other notes. I think, we talked earlier about the 2.5 million in this cycle and then encumbering 2.5 million into the future, what that looks like. I think Todd addressed that question and gave some background about how that would work. What else am I missing in here?
The general fund section, how do you address making sure it goes where it's intended, I guess?
In terms of if that money went to the port and it went into its general fund, is it going to fund the thing they're requesting it for?
Yeah, I just don't quite understand how you ensure that.
I think that happens through contracting. If that becomes a project, you're going to have that level of detail, that application. When you get that application, there's going to be a lot more detail than what we got in the LOI process. Mm-hmm. And then when you enter into a contract around that grant, you're going to ensure that the funding is going to its intended purpose, and there would be a lot more detail about what that money would be going towards and how it would be used. One thing, maybe getting out over my skis here, but like revenue guarantees in the airline world is also an interesting space because it's not always needed. You're committing these funds and saying there's a revenue guarantee here to make sure we land that flight and that flight is financially solid, but they don't always need that full scope. And so I think that's just part of that contracting process to make sure that the money is ending up with the intention of the project.
Okay.
If I may add to this, specific to the revenue guarantee, and one of the things, since we're talking about the public process here and wanting statements made in a public forum that our applicants could go back and view later, it would not be unusual in this instance of a revenue guarantee, if it was going to be funded, at least in part. We may not be the only source. There may be other revenue that's going to be put into this revenue guarantee from other entities. But for our portion of that, should the commission elect to grant money for this revenue guarantee, those dollars could be held by Travel Oregon. We have a contract for the release of those dollars and what would need to happen for those dollars to be released. The airline would need to indicate a need for that revenue guarantee. In other words, that there was a shortfall that occurred over what was projected in terms of revenue and what was actually received. okay? So that needs to occur in some manner that would obviously protect the overall financial reporting of a private corporation, the major airline. But there would be documentation that would need to be submitted for that. And then the dollars, if needed, would then be expended specifically for that reason from Travel Oregon, either to the Port of Portland or to the airline, based on how our agreement is set up, to fulfill that revenue guarantee. So in other words, the dollars don't necessarily even have to leave our accounts until such time as it's demonstrated to us that there is a need for the revenue guarantee. We're encumbering those dollars. We're going to hold them. In essence, they are appropriated. They just haven't been expended yet. Until such time as we've been demonstrated that the need is there for the revenue guarantee. Does that help, Jen?
Yeah, it does. I just think anytime that you aren't specifying where the funds are going to go, a general fund can be dicey, in my view. So that's why
a what
a
fund?
general fund. If you're putting dollars into a general fund, it's on their side. It doesn't feel like it's specific to it.
And I guess all I would again say is, you don't need to put dollars into their general fund. We hold dollars in our account. Yeah, and then once it's demonstrated by the airline that there's a need for the revenue guarantee, then the dollars can be released according to
that does help.
whatever our agreement would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I would like to suggest, and I could be wrong here, but maybe we just run through each one of these opportunities and we ask questions directly related to them instead of kind of bouncing around. Because I have more questions there as well, and I think everybody does. If it's okay with everybody, could we please start with the Osborne Aquatic Center? Does anybody have comments or additional questions? Thanks for your early ones, Nick, on that.
About that aquatic center, I think the question was about, it's a school district, and I'm trying to understand it's sports tourism, but can tourists go there directly because it's a school district? I'm a little confused over that, or they can only accommodate when there are school competitions.
I am going to make a suggestion that we may not have enough information to answer your questions. We have the LOIs that were submitted from these applicants, and that is as much as we have, and we're happy to share those with you. And I don't know that I want to put any of us into the position of defending or advocating on behalf of any particular proposal to you. So I might just say, if you want to say your questions for the record, and we can certainly respond to them if they came up in the committee discussion. Otherwise, I think we may have to let the questions stand until such time as you move forward to application. And if there are more questions than you feel comfortable with, then perhaps you don't move forward to application. But I certainly don't want to privilege one application or one proposal over another based on what we can remember in this meeting. Just want to be as fair as we can.
Perfect.
So thank you for the question.
The only question I had in regards to this application, just for clarification, and all applications, is their request was $1 million. Is that correct? Okay. And so we have a list of the 7 organizations, and we have the scale of their requests spelled out, what they are asking from each of us. Yeah.
Yes, and you're correct that some of them just asked for a fixed amount and offered no scale, and that's stated in your packet.
Right.
Some of them did provide a range of funding amounts at which they still felt that their project could have impact, and that's also been provided.
Right.
So I hope that that's clear.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, on a positive for that one, I had an example of the Medford sports complexes. Youth sports are quite prolific these days. We are traveling long distances for kids' sports, And there's a lot of movement, and that could be beneficial for that community and the rest of the people competing. That was my one comment.
Chair Willetts, are you talking about the Rogue X facility in Medford? Is that?
Yes,
what
as
you're
a
referencing?
comparison, just as a good example of what occurs with, oh, thanks, way to call that out. Yeah. And next up, Eugene Airport. Do people have comments, questions, or concerns that could be answered today? All right. Fly Salem Foundation. Personally, I will piggyback, and just for an understanding, not for any reference on whether it's qualified or not, but the organization's operating expenses of that total that we were viewing there, is that is that provided by them, or is that vetted? Okay. Understood.
That is provided by them in the application.
Yeah.
And we did provide some guidance in the guidelines about how to arrive at that figure if it wasn't, so for nonprofits, we advise them to look at, I think it's line 19 in their 990s.
Okay.
If they were not a nonprofit, we gave them what should be included based on that definition. So that was, and those figures were provided by the applicants.
Great, thank you.
Do we know how that organization is structured? Fly Salem Foundation? Is it a 501c3, 6? Is it
I believe
a
it's
municipal?
a 501c3.
Okay. And do we know when it was founded?
No, not off the top of my head, but that would be publicly available information that I'd be happy to share.
Okay, good. And the board, I think, understanding who's a part of that, or how many board members are, we don't need to know who, but how many board members. And if there's, and how, I guess, the solvency of that organization to support a match. I just have to put that out there.
I agree.
Okay, Oregon Coast Trail Foundation, next project. I had a quick question. The scale of the request is substantial, between 1.6 and 2.6, 2.7. And I didn't necessarily see the math work out down below. Is there additional items that weren't included?
I don't believe
In this
so. I
summary?
believe the way I understood it was that the minimum scale of request would be to fund prong 1, construction.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
any add-ons would be to fund any of the additional prongs that were mentioned. So with a higher investment, if it was, I'm not going to do the math in a public meeting this way, but a $2 million investment roughly would fund prong 1 and prong 2. And then if you added another $50,000, that would include prong 3. All the way up to the partner project support and the admin fee.
Got it.
So I believe all of those figures in the scale of request summary added together would equal the higher scale of request.
didn't.
Okay. Sometimes the math doesn't work. That was not an auto-calculated
Okay,
math field.
perfect.
That was a narrative field that we extrapolated.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Or that they extrapolated for us.
I would like to understand more about, and maybe I'm missing it, but does this include any kind of parking access in their infrastructure? And do the communities have enough lodging and infrastructure in the space to support additional visitors if that achieves that?
when I reviewed this, I don't believe new trailheads were part of it. It was taking existing trail and improving that in most cases. So it wasn't necessarily like the parking and the access was already there, and it was about improving that to be the ADA accessible in certain situations. But I think it's something we should probably look into and just make sure we understand that. Again, probably good details come in an application.
Okay. And then just the piece around, if they do improve trail, ideally more people will be using it. So do they have the infrastructure to support that in the communities that it's coming through?
And just to be clear, as you guys understood it, prong one, the construction includes no budget for overhead and admin?
I believe so. That's how I read it. But
Yeah.
again, that would be something
Sure.
that would be clearer in an application where
Yeah.
you would have a more detailed,
Yeah.
detailed budget.
As well as maintenance and.
So I do want to speak to maintenance specifically, that we did not ask what the long-term maintenance costs would be on any of these facilities. We asked, what did you need to complete the project within this 2 years? And we didn't ask them to provide any future projections. It's a fair question, but also that wasn't something that we asked for in this stage.
But it's something we can in the next stage.
Long-term sustainability is not currently included in the application. We asked, what is the cost and impact of this project during the funding period? Because we cannot guarantee funding beyond the end of the 2-year period. So I didn't ask the applicants to make us any guarantees past the end of the 2-year period.
But so do we have the latitude then to have that as a follow-up at some point? I feel like giving funding to a project, you want to see it long-term succeed. So that's a really fair question. How do we put that in place?
Let us think about that and get back to you. I agree. It is a fair question. It is not one that we included in the guidelines for this grant process. And so we would have to figure out the best way to do that, that allowed these applicants in the next 3 weeks to respond to a new component that was not originally addressed.
I think it's also important to point out that we've only done this once. So I think we all need to give ourselves, the staff and us, grace in terms of we don't do this every day. And so there's going to be some questions, right, that come up. And I recognize it wasn't in the application, but I think it is a good question. And so I ask you to bear with us when we ask you questions that we believe need to be answered, and we will bear with you knowing that some of these questions that we're asking you didn't ask because we didn't request them, right?
Absolutely. Thank you. We're learning together how to do this. Yeah.
Okay, Oregon Shakespeare Festival. I was pleasantly, I appreciated seeing the extension of the visitor season in their synthesis, and overall felt good. Okay. Good to move on. All right, Port of Portland. I still couldn't fathom that we don't have direct air service to Asia since 2020. I did simple search, and these could be false facts from the Google, but San Francisco has 30 to 31 a day direct flights to Asia. Seattle, 10 a day minimum, 100 a week. And that was quite impactful to me as I look at certainly a region that needs to recover, and the #1 flight market into this state, or the #1 port for this state. And that was my takeaway from that portion.
I think one of the things going through this process for me is the definition of statewide impact, right? And you have come to us and we've talked about, well, this can have a regional impact, or yeah, if we work on the trails, what does that look like? And again, for me personally, I think that's why I'm asking for these 7 applications, is because I believe that getting more information is going to help me define what that looks like. Originally, we opened up this large grant process because of a presentation from Port of Portland. And at that moment in my mind, I thought, okay, that represents statewide impact, right? That's a flight, Portland's the gateway, people travel. But in the present, looking at these other applications, it gave me pause of what that looks like. And so again, I'm gonna probably sound, what's that saying, like a dead horse? I'm beating a dead horse, but I really do think we need to give ourselves grace in this. We don't do this enough. And so I think that that's why I'm advocating for, let's look at all of them. Let's get all of these questions answered. Let's talk to them if we have the ability to do so that we as a commission can make the best decision for the entire state. Sorry, Greg, go ahead.
I'd also just say probably the Port of Portland one more than any other. I hope their full application is very data and financially rich and driven.
Specific, yeah.
Specific.
And to Chair DeNovo's, to ex officio Chair DeNovo's comments, I think I would be interested in looking too at a few that we're not looking at the specifics, but are named in the process. So if possible, looking at some of the 59 that are in the other category, but I believe could have a state impact. For example, culinary experience or literary experience. If it's possible to look at some of those applicants in further detail. The literary arts and let's see. I also thought that the World Forestry Center could be a unique statewide impact, as well as a prestigious culinary guide. Looking to, and just I'd like to look further at, and I haven't seen the application from the Blue Ribbon Committee, but I did step away from that discussion and would like to see their application for the chateau and the caves. So that would be the Friends of Oregon. And the Oregon Arts and Film program and the Japanese garden. Not to put it all out there, but I would really like to look at some of these other opportunities that have an equitable impact in Oregon.
Can I just maybe follow up with what you're asking, David? Did the committee have anything that you can share with why some of the things that he's asked about didn't advance? That you can concisely and cleanly share?
I don't know, like, I don't want to get into specifics. Sure. Again, it goes back to, when you look at a budget and you're evaluating, can you get there? Can you get there quickly? Is there matching funds? How close are you to total project cost? It's a consideration. Conversation about, does this project create statewide impact, or is it really just localized impact? Extending the season, does it increase? All the things that we wanted at a macro level from this program, The only thing I can say is the reason they didn't make this is the committee ultimately just said it's not checking one of those boxes to the extent that makes sense to move forward. As I said before, however, you are absolutely entitled to say, we want to see an application from that group, or we want to take time to look more deeply into this. This is a group of 7 from Travel Oregon's extended leadership team who tried to come forward with 10 or less, based on those criteria. And that's what the consensus was coming out of that room. There is not a single project on here that isn't a great project that I wish we could fund and see come to life. Right. That's the difficult part. So maybe just leave it at that without going into specifics. Those were the considerations we made to come up with this list. It's not a reflection of the quality of the idea. It is, can we get there with the funding we have, or is there too much work to be done to get there?
So I would just, can I add? I would just add to Kevney's comments in the sense that we're basing this off of a budget of $5 million. And if you look at the 7 that we moved forward to you, that's already over the $5 million. So that was also a consideration in this. A consideration we had was doing the letter of intent for this process. And I know it's posing a lot of questions, right, from the committee, and there's a lot of things we can't answer, and it's like, oh gosh, this is hard that we can't answer. And actually when our committee reviewed this, they also were like, gosh, we wish we had a little bit more, and that's where you see some of this synthesis. But the rationale behind that was so that we weren't wasting people's time and energy in completing a very long, extensive application, even though we want to get you there, right? Like that's where we want you to see this long application, and so that you're able to be like, yeah, this is the investment we want to make as a commission. So I guess I would just say that the folks that were on this committee, their collective expertise working in this tourism industry, whether they are bringing expertise in marketing, whether they're bringing expertise in sales as DMOs formally, everything they're bringing to the package, the policy space, was looking at these in a way where they were trying to elevate for you which ones that they felt at this moment in time, this singular moment, would be the ones that had the best chance or opportunity to move forward to an application. So that's where their thinking was really centered around. And again, we can share these other LOIs. We would more than welcome share the LOIs with you, or anyone that we want to look at. But the committee really put a lot of thought in this based on those levels of like, what can we do without stressing or straining some of our industry partners, and being realistic of where we are with our funding right now.
I appreciate the thought that you all put into this and the leadership took in reviewing the applicants and presenting these top 7 applicants for our review. So please understand I completely respect that process. So.
And I will say we're happy to respond to you. I made a note of the, I believe, 6 LOIs that you asked to look at. We can send that to you this evening for you to take a look at.
That would be perfect.
Happy
Thank
to do
you.
that. I am sure that Suzanne is listening at home, so she probably already made a folder. So that's how great our staff is. And I just want to echo what both Kevney and Michelle said. Number one, I would be excited to see you consider any of these projects for funding. That's my job here, is to get funds out in the state. And as Michelle said, I knew that there was going to be a huge outcry of need and interest and enthusiasm from the field looking for these dollars. And I'm trying to get you from 166 million down to like 5. So that's a huge cut. And this is like, you're getting a little peek inside what it is like to run these grant review committees that our team does all the time, because we're not always dealing with this many zeros, but we're almost always dealing with this tough a decision. Mm-hmm. So thank you for kind of stepping into that really tough space with us, and happy to share with anybody else any of the other LOIs that you have curiosity about, and maybe you want to bring them into your discussion. We can bring more forward for you, but you need to allocate the time to review them. And as Michelle said, we want to help manage expectations from these projects that are like wanting to put shovels in the ground, waiting for this process to tell them if they can or not.
Thank you.
And how about your time with each one of these, when we go to application phase, what does that look like for you? I mean, you are certainly the experts in this space, and to your point, Deb, like there's an emotional toll here, which we're feeling as well. We feel for you guys in this process. What is the time for reviewing a single application from your department?
I built it to be pretty streamlined
And-
because I wanted to get them to you. So
Yeah.
we're well equipped to manage volume.
Okay.
This is what we do every cycle. We took in 150 full applications in the last competitive grant cycle. So thank you for being mindful of that, but we're certainly standing ready to manage whatever volume you all decide you're willing to take on. So yes, we can do that, and I do want to be cognizant of your time as well, because I think this process is best served by all of you having the capacity to read these applications. And so, as I've said from the beginning, I don't advocate that you bring more than 10 forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, commissioners, are we?
Do you want
have
to
one
talk
more.
about the last one?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Warm Springs, thank you, Todd. Warm Springs Community Action Team, and I actually did have a question there. I feel like I have seen it in the past. The funding is extensive, and also the estimated secured income is substantial as well. Is it a project that Travel Oregon has already contributed to, or it seems just overall, have we already?
Yes, Travel Oregon has committed funding previously from a competitive grant cycle to help move the commissary building. So this
Okay.
was kind of early on in the process. And so I believe that was $100. Do we have it down on this? Oh, we don't. I believe that was a $100,000 award. And then this same organization, the Warm Springs Community Action Team, did receive some capacity funds in 2022. That was to extend services for a grant writer to help continue their work in building up funding and support for the commissary project itself.
So when was the 100,000 given? How long ago was that?
That was awarded in 2018.
Thank you for your institutional memory, Michelle.
I'll add, I just think it's worth it. There are other DMO and RDMO partners who have also supported this project historically. So what it's worth, it's been something in the Central Oregon region that's been communicated and supported by both DMOs and RDMOs in that region as well over time.
Yeah, Visit Central Oregon actually contributed funds around the same time as Travel Oregon did as well to this project. And I think they've had some consistent funding in that space.
Great, thank you.
Chair Willits, may I make a proposal? So we've looked at all the applications, and so I guess the next question is, does this commission agree that all 7 should move forward? And do they move forward at, I mean, quite honestly, I would suggest that if we do move them forward, for the sake of conversation, we move them forward at the requested amount they've asked for. And then we're going to get a detailed application that's going to tell us more information. And then Deb is going to work her magic so that we can ask all of our pointy-headed questions, whether live or via Zoom. And then we'll also have a video presentation, and we'll also be able to spend some more time thinking about this so that when we do come to September, we can make a very informed decision.
I want to be clear, there are ranges
I
and
know.
scales.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I'm
Hit
saying
the most.
Yeah, because, well, my expectation is we're not going to award all of these, so I would just say, based on the, sorry, let me go here, sorry.
Page
This-
4 might give you what you're
Thank
looking
you very
for.
much. The scale of requests. So, for example, Corvallis School District asked for $1 million. Eugene Airport asked for $500,000.
Yes. Are you, okay.
So that's what I would propose, just as the start of a conversation, to
Yep.
see where the rest of the commission feels.
Super fair. We've been through.
And
these things in the
I
past.
also asked to review other applications, so I'd like to read those this evening
Okay.
as requested. Yeah.
Okay.
If that is the case, does the full commission want to read those? So we're prepared. Otherwise, you have the knowledge, David, tomorrow, and you're sharing it with us. Could you?
If that's, I hope that's not asking a lot of everyone, but I'd like to take a look at those applications if possible.
For context, it's 3 narrative questions, 4 dollar figures, and 1 budget narrative.
Thank you.
So likely about 15 to 20 minutes that you would be spending on these, maybe 15 minutes reading it. If you're kind of thinking through, actually less than that, sorry. I was using a framework of you evaluating them. So yeah, I would say you could probably read through these in 10 minutes.
Is that, are you all okay looking
fine.
at
I
the
think
ones that I've requested?
It's
I
your
think it
last
was.
meeting. You're going to make us work hard. Is that right?
I think it's fair.
Thank you. I
To
really
be,
appreciate
I
your
want to
time in
revisit
doing
that. 10 minutes per application or 10 minutes total?
No, I would say give
Per.
yourself, I don't know, am I saying?
I think you should
wrong?
budget an hour of your time this evening to thoughtfully review
Awesome.
the
Awesome.
six,
Yeah.
I think, 6 that we've noted, and then synthesize kind of your thoughts and questions about them. That is my suggestion.
That is fair. And
I have a question about the next step of that process, though. We
Great.
have 7 here, 6 to review, which can honor that. I'd like to look at them. But then, how do we then move forward tomorrow with a discussion about what we're bringing to the table to advance?
in a similar way to what we've just been through,
Okay.
we're going
And we have the time
to work
allotted
through.
tomorrow to do that.
We're going to make that time.
Okay. Great.
This is way easier than trying to find another executive director. So this is nothing, guys. We've spent a lot of time, right, in that
A
process.
little too early.
I really like that perspective. So we will work with Matthew, and just to confirm, the 6 that you all would like to look at are Literary Arts, World Forestry Center. You said a culinary guide, so I'm assuming that was the Travel Portland? Okay, great. Oregon, Friends of the Oregon Caves and Chateau?
Yes.
Yes. Oregon Arts and Film, I think.
Yes.
Okay. And then the Oregon Japanese Garden.
Yes.
Okay, great.
And can I ask one last question? The amount we approve for their application, is that the amount we would have to award, or it could be different at the time of award?
You could make it different at the time of award. We can certainly provide a perspective on best practices and what, you know, the implication on the project and the applicant if the award is less than what they asked for, but there is nothing in the guidelines that says you are committed to awarding exactly what they ask for. That would just be the maximum threshold. I'm assuming, so 2 factors that I would consider if I were an applicant. Number 1, am I prepared to make that match clear in my application? And if not, I should reduce my request amount to where I can achieve the required match. And the second component would be the scale of the project and how might that need to shift in accordance with what that amount was. But you certainly have that flexibility.
All right, commissioners, we have a little homework, and we're good at this now, and I appreciate a process that gets us to a positive decision, well-educated and informed, and we're great at that, and I appreciate this commission. And to you, you're catching us up in a quick period of time with something that you've had time to deal with, and you're an expert at dealing with it. So thank you for your patience with this. If nothing else, you see passion and interest and a desire to get it right. And that's what this commission has been great at lately, or period. Thank you. Any other questions or concerns, announcements, commissioners?
I, again, just want to thank the commissioners for taking an hour of their time this evening to review the additional 6 applicants. And also, I wanted to thank the executive team for their time and commitment, again, for presenting the applicants that we've reviewed today. So, thank you. and thank you for presenting the additional 6.
All right. So it is 4:50. I also want to thank everybody for the extra time today. Thank you for attending this meeting, joining us online at our on our YouTube channel as well. Appreciate the energy to do that and your interest. And with that, it concludes our staff presentations, and there are additional. And our next meeting is tomorrow, June 9th, and will be held here at. At the Columbia Gorge Discovery Center and Museum, starting at 9 a.m. I'd like to thank staff for a wonderful briefing, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.